All right, my friends. Welcome on back to the potcast, a podcast for budding enthusiasts. And as always, you're joined by your boy, Heavy Days, here from the Upside Down Library. As always, we want to give a massive shout out to our incredible sponsors who help make the show happen. Seeds Here Now, your number one seed bank in the industry. Guarantee on satisfaction, not just germination. Why would you go anywhere else? All the hottest breeders, the latest drops. Guess what? They got Lucky Dog as well. Go jump on it. But in order to grow seeds out good, you need to make sure your room is pest and pathogen free. And for that, you need to check out our friends at Copert Biological Systems. With all the best pest and predator technology, they will ensure your garden is firing on all cylinders and you have the best crop to date. Trust me guys, if you got aphids, check out their Apiparm. If you got spider mites, check out the Spidex Vital. These are two must-have products for any serious grower. Likewise, if you're serious about growing, you got to make sure your room's dialed in, and for that, check out our good friends at Pulse Sensors. From humidity to temperature to PAR to VPD to so much more, whether you're a single tent, a single room or a multi-state operation, you need to keep track of your grow parameters to ensure you have the most productive harvest. Want increased yield, increased resin, increased terpenes? Get serious, get a Pulse sensor. And last but not least, a huge shout out to the Patreon gang. We love you so much. You're truly the lifeblood of the show. If you would like to get early access to upcoming episodes, completely unheard interviews with the likes of Mr. Mean Gene, Bob Hemphill, Bodie, Trichome Jungles, so much more. We're now doing genetic giveaways every second week on the Discord live sessions. There's so many reasons to join up, guys. Go check out www.patreon.com/thepodcast. On this episode, we are incredibly blessed to have the man, the myth, the legend, the chemdog aficionado, the head honcho behind Lucky Dog Seed Co., as well as Lucky Dog Dispensary, none other than Mr. SkunkVA himself. We were lucky enough to record this one live from Lucky Dog Dispensary in Bozeman, Montana. Go check it out. The most fire cannabis you're going to see. A little bit of noise here and there. We did our best to edit it. I'm sure you'll enjoy it nonetheless. Here to catch up since our legendary first episode all those years ago. Talking about the chemdog, genetics, the future of legalization, what you can expect from him, so much more. Need I say any more, guys? Let's get into this one. Alrighty gang, we're back for another one. Thank you for joining me. On this episode, we have the legend behind Lucky Dog Seed Co., the Chem 91 King himself, SkunkVA. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you, and what a great venue to be filming this episode at. We are at the Lucky Dog Dispensary in Montana. Tell me a bit about it. When did this happen?
Lucky Dog Cannabis kind of was conceptualized a long time ago, but this particular version of it is, we started here in February of 21, right after COVID. COVID actually prevented us from getting a lot of the licensing requirements, like the inspection and just a lot of the paperwork that has to be done here in Montana, beautiful Montana, Bozeman. And, so that's kind of how it is. And I made a big move from Sonoma County to here to kind of make this happen. Just want to be in the legal space, the legal cannabis space, just because I feel like in the future it's going to be absolutely necessary to be part of cannabis in the future, to have a licensed facility. So that's what we're doing here.
That's awesome to hear. I guess the first question that jumps to mind is, how would you compare Montana to California in terms of the scene and maybe some of the legalities?
Well, Montana is a reddish, purplish state, and they have an interesting population here, and I fit in very well here because freedom is big here, not just in word, but in action, and I appreciate that it motivates me and inspires me. And I'm always going to have my heart in California, of course. The Bay Area is where I kind of grew up after, I left Virginia and Grateful Dead tour was over. Raised my family there, my daughter there. So But it's changed a lot. The climate's changed there a lot, and then cannabis has changed a lot there because it's very difficult for a small operator like myself to function there. The regulation loop hurdles, the obstacles of distribution, and it just didn't work out for me there. So how I got here is a long story. We can get into that some other time. And but I'm happy to be here. And so the way it's different here is, I would say that the consumer here is more geared, at least my customers that come here are more geared towards like older school, like they're interested in what they had in high school. And I was surprised to find out that even though there's only 1 million people in Montana, it seems like everybody here consumes cannabis. And so I have the opportunity to, talk directly to my customers again, something that I had to let go of when I was in my early 20s. Turkey bags on beds, suitcases and duffel bags full of, Kush and sour diesel going far, far places. So I've learned here that, I've gotten back in touch with the consumer directly, and I love it. It inspires me. I love to be around the joy that cannabis brings people. And when people are just trying to make $100 here and there, there's no joy in that, It's just the way you survive. But when you are able to show a consumer 71 different options and strains, we have 44 in the display case right now. I mean, you can find and talk to them and find what they want based on what they've seen. And what I've noticed is a lot of folks, young and old, they kind of go back to what they remember, what they fell in love with when it comes to cannabis. And we have plenty of options for them, We have the new and the old. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. And as far as the regulations go, I never really did it in California, but I was close enough to see how difficult it was there. And although I don't really do well with regulations in general, I have found that I can adapt to what is asked of me here. So I have. It's mostly just a bunch of letting go of, that's fucking stupid.
You got to bend to the will of the man, right? That's interesting, all of that info, and I would love to dive into some of the strains you have on offer. I guess the first thing I'd be interested in knowing is, for anyone listening to this, there's basically every clone only you've ever drooled over in this display case. So my question is, do you feel like your customers are aware of how spoilt they are in terms of they've got basically like the top 41 most in-demand clone-onlys at their fingertips? Do you think most of them realize this?
They do have a slight view of it when they come in. My perception is just between me and my customer. So between my customer and another company, flower shop or what have you, I don't really have that perception. So what I do know is that when folks come in, I with a few questions, because I love cannabis too, I can kind of narrow down where we're going to go. And it's a lot of fun for me because we're both discovering new things together, and I love it. I have customers that come in here, hang out, and talk about, purely what they're looking at and what they've experienced for 20, 30 minutes, and I'll spend every minute with them. And usually they're the ones that are trying to get away from me, because I'm leveling their mind with cannabinoid and terpene and brain chemistry information, and trying to explain to them that THC percentages don't really matter that much, and why don't they matter. And so I love it because it's given me the opportunity to kind of re-educate a cannabis user as to what we now know about cannabis, and why we all love different things, and why the individuals are drawn to different things. So it's kind of like a discovery for them. So I would say that it's mostly, the thing I've noticed about my consumers that come in is that they want to try everything. It's like a winery. They want to go through the flight. Of course, it's going to take you a couple of weeks because we have so much. But, we will get there. We'll go from the A to B and down to C, D, E, and F. We got it all. And so my favorite comment when I show someone and let them, take in the aroma is, Man, that smells like high school. And I'm like, that's the one for you then, because I know exactly what you mean, you know? So
That's brilliant. I like the analogy of taking him on a journey. And I'd be interested to know, what has unexpectedly caught you off guard as popular? Are there any strains that you thought maybe, they're too strong for most people, or just you didn't think it was going to be a crowd favorite, but it's turned out to be like a really big hit?
Well, I would say that the answer to that would be not necessarily new strains, but strains that have been with us for a while. Durban Poison comes to mind. That's never really been a popular strain, as so to speak, in all my circles in life. But up here, they really do like that, jet fuel, energetic feeling. They like it, So I've learned a lot about what people like by being here, because you make assumptions, about what you like and what someone else may like based on those assumptions of what you enjoy. And I've learned that that's definitely not the case. I've gotten reintroduced to that fact that it's just not the case. That you just never know, and you have to take the time with someone and go through it with them. And so, luckily for us, even though we have probably more strains on the table than anyone else in this beautiful state, I've been collecting these for a long time, and things that I held on to that weren't never really popular are very popular here, and so that's been a big surprise for me. Also, a pleasant surprise, because we could talk chem all day long, but there's so many different things, and those folks, they try chem, and people come in and they're very frank with me about why they use cannabis, and it's a treasure to me. I love it, It's rewarding again,
There you go. Well, look, I got to tie it in. This has to be one of probably the only places you can get verified Chem 91 flower to purchase. What conditions do you feel Chem 91 works best for? And have you ever had any customers sort of do the fabled story of taking some home, consuming it, becoming a bit uncomfortably numb? It's a little too strong.
Uncomfortably high? Honestly, no. I've been surprised on the level of consumption. At least in my experience with these customers, I'm always blown away by like their tolerance and like how much they like powerful cannabis. I don't have many people come through this door and say, "Hey, give me do you have something that's just not that strong?" I mean, that's a thing out there, but I don't get a lot of that. So the way I do it here and the way we do it here is that, like, obviously we all agree that, most of us agree that there's the indica, sativa, nomenclature is not really accurate. It's got a purpose to it, but it's just not accurate. So I try to steer people away from that, and I try to find out, when do they like to smoke? Do they like to smoke in the morning, or do they like to smoke in the daytime? Do they like to smoke anytime? Do they like to smoke nighttime? And that helps us narrow it down to what we're looking for. And some folks come in and they're clearly looking for relief of an ailment that's happened still. It's real, and so that makes it even easier when it's like that. Sleep, stress, my body hurts, those types of things. So we just ask some questions, and we narrow it down. And I've noticed, when I first started doing this and selling to the public, I kind of, felt like, I got to be quick with these folks. And I found out that wasn't really the case. They want me to spend the time. They want us here at Lucky Dog Cannabis to spend the time with them to help them understand what they're going to be consuming, why they, and then, of course, when they come back, I mean, my customers are like my family here. They're like, we talk about our lives. We pick up where we left off last week, if that's the case. And I enjoy that. And getting to know them allows me to, kind of pinpoint, hey, maybe you want to try this, Maybe you want to stay away from this. Maybe this one's going to give you too much anxiety, possibly. Maybe this one's going to make you too sleepy, and I know that's not what you want. You want to go golfing with your buddies or whatever, So, I don't think that, if it was a much bigger company, I don't think that we would be able to have that kind of personalized service, but here we do. And I really enjoy it. So as far as like the Chem 91 goes, I always tell folks that it's basically good for any time, anything you want to do. And then, I mean, to be honest, I say, especially at 4 in the morning after a long night, with, say a bright and vibrant psychedelic experience and the sun's coming up, there's no better time to consume Chem 91 than that. But you can get up in the morning and smoke it, and you can smoke it all day. It's medicinal, If you're hungry, it's certainly going to help you with that, So, it's an anytime herb here, and I've, in the past, I've always said that, maybe this is the more narcotic, but then when I get other people's experience, and that's a key point, is that my experience is one thing. I have my brain chemistry, but everyone else has different brain chemistries. And so I always make sure to get the feedback from them, because I learn more from them than they learn from me. I don't know if they know that, but their different experience than mine, enlightens me, and I appreciate that. And then that allows me to kind of reflect on it and to share that with the next customer. So, yeah, I would say the Chem 91 experience, a lot of people come here just to have the Chem 91 or the Crossroad Chem. They've heard about it, and this is their chance to try it, and this is the place. This would be the place to get it. And so, we have a lot of tourism here in Montana, and we have had a lot of people come from out of town, search us out, and then come and try real chemdog 91.
That's brilliant. It sounds in general like the Montana clientele base, or the patrons of the business, are more educated and sort of interested in finding out a bit more, as you said. Out of curiosity, do you still find there are still a lot of those same trends you see in California? Like, I guess maybe a way to distill it down is cookies still pervasive in Montana, for example?
I wouldn't be able to answer that accurately, because my perception is not. It doesn't include that. So I don't really get, and I don't think, I can't say this is something that would be across the board here in Montana. But my experience is, folks don't really come in here looking for the strain they heard of. I have some of those strains, and I've been surprised that how very little I sell to a consumer of that. It surprised me. The Gelato 41, for instance, I think it's tremendous. I love it. I love the smell. I offer it to people oftentimes, and they usually don't even want to look at it. And I can't really tell you why. I've sensed that they've tried it somewhere else maybe, and that they already had decided that it's not for them. We don't really have any cookies strains here as far as I know. We do have Trop Cherry. I don't know how these are really related to that, but in my mind, they're kind of a part of that group. Of course, we have the Tits. This is the shit by D-Back Genetics, and Grandpa, I think he goes by, and it does have the OGKB in it, so that's in there, and that one's been moderately popular. Maybe not as popular. It's one of my favorites, so I don't think it's quite on that level with the consumer. Most of the people come in, they've heard of older school strains that we have, or they've maybe heard, me talking about it in the past and wanted to try it. And then we have, lots of clonal that everyone's heard of, So, but we don't have a lot of that kind of stuff, and we don't get asked about it a lot. And, that's all I got on that, really. It's a little bit of a weird perception I got because of what we do have,
Yeah, no, that's a good answer, and you made me sort of remember one of the Patreon submitted questions we got, which was that on a recent episode we were speaking to Tom Hill, and he sort of said that it was a bit unexpected that he'd tried a sample of Gelato 33 and he was pretty into it. And one of our Patreon listeners was wondering, are there any other modern strains besides maybe the Gelato 41 you just mentioned that sort of caught you off guard a bit and you are interested in or fond of, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of things that are new to me, you could say. And I don't know if anything caught me off surprise like that. I'm kind of particular about what I prefer. I do like the skunk dog. That's kind of new to me. But it's in the same realm as everything else that I, love. And I do have a good cut of Wedding Crasher, a pheno that my partner selected, years ago, and she was kind enough to share with me. And that one's been surprising to me, and I think that would be one that I could, say would answer that question. and that it's like it's a mellow, it's very smooth, it's easygoing, it's anytime. And I'm 49 years old, and cannabis now, that's kind of where I'm at. I like smooth, easy. I don't need like the big, heavy, whack me in the top of the head experience anymore with it. I just want something that tastes good and makes me feel relaxed. So I would say that was a surprise to me. That's a new one to me. Symbiotic Genetics, I believe, created that one. And this pheno here is the best I've seen, and I'm glad to have it. And I often, take less experienced smokers or older folks who are delving into cannabis, and I kind of guide them to that. And I said, it's got a nice grape flavor to it. You can't, complain about the flavor, and it's not a big commitment when you smoke, which I think, you have to be careful. Like not everybody comes to the door wants the strongest weed you got. You know what I mean? And so that one is, I think that would be one that was a surprise to me.
Yeah, great answer. I wasn't expecting to hear that. While we're on the topic, what have you been smoking on lately? What's the sort of things, if I asked you at the end of the day, what have you been puffing on? What things are your go-to?
Well, the Wedding Crasher is a good one for me, and I'm always smoking on tits. I really do like the red Lebanese hash plant. That's my go-to at night. That's my nighttime, let's go to bed. I have a lot of, body pains, working my whole life, doing too much. So I have some body pain. So I tend to always fall towards the indicas. But, I try to have a little bit of everything. I try to try different things. I've been pleasantly surprised with, let's see, what are we looking at? Of course, I love the Durban Thai High Flyer. So that would be my daytime thing. But Crossroad Chem is still my favorite. And I know it sounds kind of cuckoo because I made it, but I love it. I like weed that's perfectly right down the middle. I like hybrids that are perfectly right down the middle, anytime herb, and that one hits that box big time. It's got good flavor. You can smoke anytime. It's just going to get you happier and more relaxed and more, engaged in what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're going to the bank, if you're taking the kids to the park, if you're walking your dog. It's good for everything. So it's always my go-to, and it's my most popular strain.
Nice one. And you just mentioned the Durban Thai High Flyer. I wanted to ask you, because you find that with a lot of breeders, they tend to sort of stick to one lane. Like maybe they're more into indicas and they just sort of do indica stuff. But you do tend to, both within your dispensary and within your seeds, offer a bit of a mix of sativa and indica offerings. What, in your opinion, is your most sativa seed offering?
Seed offering? It probably would be, I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up. I mean, the Chaska is probably my most sativa-like strain that I offer in seed form. But I would say that one. I would say that. But the Chaska, we've done the Russell. So, yeah, I would also add the Chem Flyer. What I liked about the Chem Flyer, so I'm not really, I probably have less experience with pure sativas, as you say, than most people you talk to. It just wasn't my lane when I was younger. But I think as most cannabis users who, or as we're aging, we find out that this changes over time. And I have really fallen in love with a nice sativa. I like the lack of appetite. I like the energetic part of it. What I didn't like when I was younger was the anxiety it brought on to me. And so I would say that the Chem Flyer, the cross I made with the Durban Thai High Flyer, cross with the Chem 91 BX3 male, it's got that for me. It gives me the energy. It wakes me up. It's great with coffee. I want to go out and do stuff. But I never feel jittery. I don't feel my heart racing. I don't feel like all these things that I don't like about that type of herb. And so I really enjoy that. And I love that sharp pineapple flavor. I mean, who doesn't love that? It's unique. You can't say it's fruity. You can't say it's gassy. It's sharp, astringent. And I love that flavor. So as long as I don't get caught up in too much thought, crippled with too much thought, or, just anxiety, borderline, I find that to be really uncomfortable for me. I think a lot of people agree. And so that's kind of it. I would say the Chem Flyer and the Russell. But the Chaska is definitely the most, energetic, I've had a lot of Chem Fuego phenos over the course of testing those out. They gave me that experience where I felt inspired, creative, energetic, the things that I think people describe sativa with, but without the jittery, And I don't like the uptight. I don't like the the chemdog makes me extremely hungry, and I don't really care for that, because I succumb to that. I can't really fight that off, So that's what I like about the sativas. Sativas are new to me in a sense. I would say relatively new to me in my perception than most folks, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm glad that I'm discovering it at this point in my life,
That's awesome to hear. I too am just getting more and more into sativas as each day goes by. So piggybacking on that thought, tell me a little bit about the Russell, because it uses a Jack Herer BX2 female. And so I guess the questions that come to mind are, what cutting did you use initially? What male did you pair to it to start the process? And were there anything specifically you wanted to improve on that Jack Herer clone, I guess?
Well, the Jack Herer is, a legendary cut. It's got the, not just lemon, but the lime flavor to it, and I think that makes it unique. I think there's a lot of strains that have that lemon citrusy flavor and aroma, and I think the Jack Herer is unique because it has that lime as well. And so I like that. It's like a multi-layered citrus, astringent citrus, and I love that about it. Like I said before, when I started working with that cut and messing around with what's going to come next, what I noticed was that the vigor wasn't the best on that cut. At least in that moment it wasn't. I've been growing the Jack Herer for a while, and it's actually, I get big yields out of it, so maybe I just didn't have it dialed in. But what I felt was that the production was a little on the weaker side, and I wanted to improve that, So I did use the BX2 in the first outcross, and then I crossed it back and made the BX2, the Jack Herer BX2. The goal was to keep the terps, keep that lemon lime flavor, keep that high-powered sativa feeling that many of us feel when they smoke. But I wanted bigger yields, more vigor, which is at the very top of my list. That's one of the higher parts of traits that I'm always breeding for is vigor. I want the end user to have the experience of like, look what I did over here with this particular plant, because I know what it feels like, and I appreciate that. And when you're a home grower and you've got a 10 or a small grow, you maybe, and this is changing, of course, but maybe your environment's not 100% perfect. Maybe it's difficult for you to do that. Maybe you live in a state where it's very difficult to create the perfect environment just for safety reasons. And so I'm always thinking about that human, that man or that woman, and that I want them to have the experience of like success, that they pulled something off. Because that, when you're growing cannabis, I think that's one of the most rewarding parts of it is that, wow, look what I can do. I can do this, And why I like that is because that I feel like that translates into other parts of your life. You can empower yourself with all kinds of things you find out that you've been paying other people to do for you, and now you can do this, I think that's what makes life better. And so I want my customers to have that experience, and I'm trying always to let them have that. I'm trying to facilitate that. And so that's why I decided to make the BX2 instead of the Jack Herer just in the cross. I wanted to see if I can get more vigor. I felt like we did. And we kept the terps. We kept the essential experience of the Jack Herer. And then we just added some punch to it with the chemdog,
Yeah, and I might have missed it. Did you mention what was the male you used to start the outcross?
The chemd BX2, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then at that point, when I popped that first generation of F1 seeds, I saw that maybe it would be a good idea to create our own female to work with. And it wasn't really like a big master plan. It was kind of like, look, we're fucking around. And then we found a BX2 that was very Jack Herer lemon lime, very vigorous and and it was like, well, why don't we use this instead of the Jack Herer? We're allowed to do that. And so that's what I did,
Yeah, nice one, nice. And in that same vein, you did the Chaska with the Super Silver Haze BX2. Is that a similar story? Are there any differences with that one?
It is a little bit similar, but it's also a little bit different. I had a cut of super. So right now I have here at Lucky Dog Cannabis, I have the Super Silver Haze, as they say, 98 cup winner cut, and it's the most. I would say it's the most common cut that you see. And, but I had a cut in the early 2000s that was, in my opinion, better, a Super Silver Haze. It was, it grew, it had more like the structure was more like a cookie structure. It had like the like tighter nugs as you go up the stick, It wasn't like the big cola that you get with the Super Silver Haze, with the shorter plant. And it stretched a little bit more. So I kind of accidentally made seeds of that by accident a long time ago. I would like to tell you what the male was, but I can't really recall because I did this in like 2006. So I had those seeds in storage, and I got the cut of the 98 cup, the one that's common nowadays. And, of course, they smelled almost identical. The smoke effect was almost identical. But I just really liked the way the other one tasted better, and I liked the way the plant overall looked better, It was really mold resistant, and like it just was my favorite one. And I had already started the work kind of, coincidentally, so I took that and I selected a male, and I went back to that lady back then. And those seeds have been in storage for a long time. And so when I got this cut, I was hoping it was the same cut, and it wasn't. And so I started popping those, and I found myself a nice female. And I said, we could either use this cut or we could use that seedling, and that's what I chose to do, hoping that I would get some of that structure. To be honest, though, I don't really feel like I succeeded on that structure part of that cross. I feel like it's, mixed all up. It doesn't seem like it really did, but it's just what I used, and the effect was the same, the flavor was the same. It was just my favorite, so I just went with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great answer, and it's cool to hear that it's a bit different from the more available one. While we're talking about breeding, I think as of yet, we really only see mostly F1 hybrids being offered. Do you have any interest in doing any line breeding, or do you feel like you're just happy to be offering F1s? And as a follow-up, how about FEMs?
Okay, so I get this question a lot from people when I get into deeper conversations about what they're looking for. And I always try to remind folks that there's a place, for everything, for FEMs and F1s and so on and so forth. And my philosophy is that nature intended for cannabis to survive, the species to survive in the F1 stage. That's the diversity of, provides like the best chance for survival. And of course, we have manipulated nature, and survival is really not no one's breeding for survival. We're breeding for genetic preservation. We're breeding for vigor. We're trying to improve our favorite traits with other favorite traits, and that's what I do. So I stick with the F1s, and I've made feminized seeds in the past, and I would say that what I do at Lucky Dog is this. It's really simple. We take our favorite cuts and we cross them with our favorite male. And what he does, and we have two different males, but what they do is the idea was never to everything is going to be like chem now. We're going to take your favorite cut and we're going to cross our male, and I'm going to make it so yours is now chem. That is a failure. And a lot of my trial and error, that's what happened. We kept picking, studs that were a little too dominant. I think most people who breed with chemdog can agree that chemdog is very dominant. She dominates, its partner. And so that can be problematic because that's not what you're trying to do. You're just trying to add a little extra goodness to it. So what we do here is, the F1 generation has a lot of variants, a lot of genetic, traits that you don't see in either one of the parents. And so that can be a problem. People don't want to buy a pack of seeds and have 13 different phenos or 6 different phenos. They want to they have an idea of what they're looking for before they even look at the pictures. They have an idea what they're looking for as soon as they see the cross. So the trial and error over here was that, we take the stud, and the way we selected him, or the way I selected, at least I say we, but it's just me, selected him was to find the one that's going to bring the most vigor, that's top, and add potency, and add some gas flavor, some fuel, but not overpower the mother. and furthermore, to keep it limited to, say, 3 or 4 different phenos, not a million different things. And so the way we do that is that's where the testing comes in. We make the cross, and a lot of times it doesn't work. I have a whole dresser drawer full of seeds that I don't feel like worked with crosses, favorite cuts. And, we wanted the testing. What we do is, of course, we're looking for stability. We're looking for the vigor. But we're also trying to say, okay, no matter how many we pop, we keep finding the same 4 phenos, roughly. Of course, there's some variance in that. And if we do that, then we've succeeded. They know what they're looking for. If someone wants to buy Chem Fuego, they know what headband is. They know what sour diesel is. And they know what chemdog is. So they don't want like some oddball, usually. And they're probably going to get one every once in a while. This is F1 generation. But the work's been done. And, we've looked at it and we've said, I would smoke this. I smoke this. I would buy this. I would grow it again. And if those boxes get checked and we don't have just chemdog, everything turned into chemdog, and that would be probably at the top of the list. So that's not what we want. But that work was done when we selected the male. We don't just pick the most chemdog male. We pick the strongest one that passes on certain traits. The potency, some of the flavor, but once again, you have to be careful because the flavor the flavor and the aroma can get dominated by chemdog. We just want the potency to pass on, and then having a male, a different male on a female, it creates the F1, and that creates the vigor we're looking for, which gives our customer, the end user, the best success. We think.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it because I always say to people that 90% of the time when someone's buying seeds of a regular strain, they're usually buying it because they want the mother. The mother's a clone only. They can't get their hands on it. And so I think that really complements your philosophy in the sense that you're allowing the mother to shine through. One of the questions we got from a lot of our listeners is, are there any focal differences you might be able to discuss between the 2 chemdog males you use? Does one bring a certain thing to the table, or is it more just about testing and seeing, one happens to work better?
That's exactly it. Of course, we started off, I started off with the BX2, and, but then as I took it further, I started to see that, of course you think, okay, well, if we select right with the BX3, it's going to be more of what we're trying to offer, right? That turned out not to be the case. It's more like a key and a lock. Some things just work better with others, I don't know. I can't really explain to you why. It's all just, my perception, my observation. I don't really have like a master plan behind any of that. But I, was hoping to get to a point where I had a stud that I can work with, and I ended up 2 because some just work better than others, and that's kind of what is reflected in what we offer because, we keep the BX2 around because it just works better. For instance, the dog patch. It just works better. Like BX3 dominated too much. And I would say that most people who've experienced chem dog genetics, chem family genetics would say, chem D, what we call chem D, is much, much, much different than chem dog, And in fact, I would say that, if you could get a chem D male, it would help you select a BX3 faster because when you're making a back cross, what you're trying to do is you're trying to find something that's not related. So it's much easier for you to differentiate the traits, So if you have, Plan A and Plan B, and Plan A is the polar opposite of Plan B, this is the best starting point for making a back cross because your next generation is going to be so much easier for you to select the traits you're actually looking for. Unfortunately, it's not quite that simple, and that's why I keep both around because what I've learned is you can't quite plan out exactly how it's all going to go down, and that it's better if you just kind of be open-minded and think outside the box, and if BX2 works better, the BX2 works better. And the dog patch is a great example of that. When I tried to use the BX3 in hopes to replace the BX2, I found that it was just too dominant in the cross. And those very different Chem D traits weren't coming out. And that was definitely not my goal. So I think that's a good example of why. Because, I'm not going to tell you how, because I don't know. I will just tell you what I observed. And that's what I observed. So we have to keep him because he works better with that. And then, of course, we found that to be true with the Chem Sister. What we call the Chem Sister these days, the Bundy cut or whatever they call it now. And so, those are just two good examples of that,
Yeah, great examples. Before we delve into some ChemD and faux ChemDs, I want to ask you, I know you've done some FEMs in the past. Is there any chance we might see them in the future, or even more specifically, maybe some S1s?
Absolutely. I realized just right now that I didn't fully answer your question when you asked me about F1s and S1s and feminized and F1 generation so right now I feel, from my perspective, that feminized seeds are really popular. Maybe because they're a better bang for your buck. You get 12, 13 female plants guaranteed for roughly the same price. Makes sense. But I always try to kind of remind the customer, grower, they're just basically two different tools. They're two different approaches to a situation. F1s, we're not really preserving the genetics. We're not preserving mom, or we're not preserving, one of the two plants in the cross. I would say that for feminized seeds, of course, having all females can be very useful to some folks, especially when they live in a state that doesn't have really, legal cannabis, and they have to be careful with their numbers. I understand that. I can't make a case against that. I would support that. But if you're a home grower, if you're growing your own cannabis, which is always someone who's on my mind when I do any kind of work, is that you want success, and you can have success with S1s and feminized seeds. Of course you can, but you're going to have a higher rate of just yield. Getting a jar of flower to smoke for several months, which is what you might need with an F1 cross. So I just try to remind people that, they each have their place. And I would say that, feminized seeds, S1s, they're more geared, in my opinion, towards if you know exactly what you want, you're not really interested in any kind of variation. And you're, in other words, like genetic preservation, so to speak. And so, with the regular seeds, F1s, F2s, we're making F2s now too. Those are going to be, that's what you're going to get. If you want genetic preservation, if you want this, and maybe you want to buy a couple hundred of those feminized seeds and kind of go through them over the course of a few years and find exactly what you want. And so, yes, we have made feminized seeds I have made feminized seeds in the past, and I'm getting ready to make another round. I'm going to be using the Crossroad Chem, and we're going to basically cross it to all of my favorite cuts and test them out and see how people like them. And then, yes, there'll be a Crossroad Chem S1 in there too.
Ooh la la, so much different angles to go off there. I guess the question I've been asked a few times by some listeners is, you just mentioned the Crossroad Chems. Are you able to tell us a little bit about that one specifically, what it's like, what maybe sort of traits it would bring to a cross, and how it differs from the Chem Crush? Because I think people get a bit confused because they notice they have the same lineages. So how are they different, and what do you like about the Crossroad Chem?
Right. So the Crossroad Chem and the Chem Crush are both Chem 91 females crossed with a San Fernando Valley OG Kush BX2. BX2 came from Shea Bud from 707 Seed Bank, a top-notch breeder, one of the best out there. Maybe not the most well-known, but definitely someone who's been doing work for a long time. I know him because I gave him the Chem 91 in, I think, circa 2006, which, he kind of took it up to Arcata and gave it to all those guys up in the Emerald Triangle. And it was all chance. It was like a random moment where it was like, this guy, I should hand him the cut, like he's going to do some good things with it. And it just was one of those inspirational things. In other words, this was the plant speaking at the moment, And so I did. And so that, years later, we lost contact, and, as we all do out here in the gutters of America. And so, I ran back into him, and he had a bunch of seeds he'd been trying to give me a long time. And so I went through a few of them, and a lot of them I think were kind of getting old. And, I probably have a bunch left. They weren't really, great germination rates, I think, because they were old. But I did find the male that I used in that cross. And so when I made the cross, I popped a bunch of those seeds, and I found that I had two distinct phenos that I found that I could not decide between. And that would be, they're both phenos of that. And so, the Chem Crush is more of like a chemdog pheno, whereas the Crossroad Chem is more of a cushy, more balanced, more cottony. I don't know how to explain it. And I just couldn't decide between the two. So I went with both, And I get that question a lot, and sometimes I'm like, geez, I shouldn't have done that, because it's just hard to it's hard to express. It's hard to kind of hard to like express to people that. And so, but that's basically the difference, They're both standalones. They are sisters, It's just that I couldn't decide between the two. I had noticed that one was distinctly more chem, and the other was distinctly more kush. And so I said, fuck it, let's just use them both,
Perfect. So it's been a minute since we've spoken, and in that time, Lucky Dog Seed Co. has flourished and had a lot of success with a lot of strains that have, quite a strong cult following. So I think we're going to have to drill into a few of them. And the first one that comes to mind for me is the Hunza Valley. And I think the reason for that is, it's a combination of like the Skelly and the Chem, and there's not a ton of Skelly crosses out there, and people are really interested in it. Why do you think the Hunza Valley has got a cult following, and how would you describe it to anyone if they were interested in sort of hearing your description of it?
Well, I would say that why I feel like it's been popular is the same reason I love it. I think those terps are so unique. The burnt rubber, the fresh tennis ball can, all the things people describe about it. And I'm big on indica. I got body pains, and I love something that relaxes my muscle. I fell in love with the Skelly when I obtained it, and couldn't wait to make a cross with it. I wanted to make something. The Skelly is notoriously difficult to grow. You won't see it in a shop like this because it's not a producer. It's extremely, botrytis resistant, even though it's got that wet, greasy, trichome. Not sandy, not dry, and it's just perfect for me. I love the smoke, but and that's kind of it right there. Like when you find a plant, a clone only, that's difficult to not only obtain but also to produce, grow, but you love it. It could be frustrating because you want to share it with the world, so that was the motivation behind making the Hunza Valley, and I feel like the Hunza Valley passes on most of those traits. The Skelly's very dominant in that cross, I would say. You won't find a lot of chemdoggy stuff in those. You're going to find more indica, Skelly, burnt rubber, tennis ball, heavy duty indica, phenos when you pop those seeds. And I'm really happy with it, and I'm glad people enjoy it because it's one of my favorites that I have for sure. I actually hate to say it out loud, but I like the Hunza Valley more than the Skelly, the phenos that I've grown. They were consistent, they were stable, and they were fun to grow. They had a little bit more stretch than the Skelly, which I think is useful to, for end users. Skelly's, complicated, even though it's pretty durable, pretty, it's, I guess durable would be the word. It's hard to screw it up. But it's just, the fact that it's so short and squat, it's like you have to know how to grow it, The Hunza Valley gives you a little bit more flexibility.
A safety net.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit more stretch, a little bit more air can get through. And so that's kind of it. I just wanted to share that cut with the world as I discovered it. And the Hunza Valley allowed me to do that. It just was one of those. It's one of the crosses that just really worked out. Like instantly. Not a lot of thought, not a lot of testing had to go on. It just worked. So.
Hell yeah! What a great answer, and definitely one of the ones I've been eyeing off myself. I've got to ask you because it's been on my mind for years. There are whispers that some people, including myself, have been partial to the idea that maybe Skelly has got some relation to the chemdog. Do you think that? And as a follow-up, at the bare minimum, do you see any similarities in the flavor?
I've heard that, and I even mentioned that on the back of the pack that people have mentioned that. I don't know if it's true. I mean, of course, there's no way to know. I don't know how we would figure that out. They definitely both have crossed Leadville, Colorado, for sure. And so, the Super Skunk was there. Leadville, Colorado, I've only snowboarded there over the years, and maybe I spent the night at someone's house on the way to see some, Grateful Dead-y stuff in the Denver area. But besides that, I can't say. I don't think I feel like I see a direct resemblance, especially when you take into consideration the Northern Lights, the NL1, because that one seems to be more like when you ask me what traits do I see outside of chemdog that are chemdog-y, I would say that's, from my memory, that would be the one. The Skelly, I can only say that because people who are closer to that cut, the puck, have mentioned it, I wouldn't say that's impossible, I would say maybe if you took Chem D and set it next to its sister, the Chemdog, and then you took Skelly and you set it next to the Chemdog, you would probably say the Skelly had more resemblance, That's what I would say. So I don't really know, and I don't like to speculate on those things because there's so much diversity in cannabis. As soon as you think you can identify traits on different strains, you find out there is no resemblance. There is no actual, not resemblance, but no relation, It can surprise you, and it does often. So I don't know, I just know that that's what folks from the Leadville area at that circa 1989-ish, said. So...
Yeah, well, look, while we're on the topic of Leadville and the infamous Joe brand, the Chem brand has gained a lot of popularity. And I guess for a lot of people, they may think of it as like sort of a pure chem line in a sense. Is that how you would describe it? Or do you think they're actually getting a little something different than two chem dogs crossed together, so to speak?
Oh, 100%. The JB cut, as I call it, and I think that you Bodie coined that name for it, which is... I love. We were familiar with the JB cut before it was called the JB cut in Sonoma County. In Sonoma County, honestly, over most of the last couple decades, we weren't that concerned about names. We were more concerned about what customers wanted, and it was on scale, large scale. And it was always OG Kushes, and it was always Sour Diesel. And no matter what else came through, those were the ones that always were getting asked about. So we had this cut, and I honestly cannot tell you where it came from, but we used to call it a Sour Diesel. Most of the people called it a Sour Diesel in my little circle. And, of course, it's not the Sour Diesel, but it was very similar to it. But the distinction was tighter nugs, heavier nugs, shorter squatter plant. But it had every bit of that smell that the Sour Diesel is known for. And so we called it a Sour Diesel, or some of us called it a Sour Diesel IBL. And I'm not really sure like where that originated from. I'm not sure if it's actually that. That's just what people called it. And so we were growing and cropping that out at scale before, I even knew who Joe Brand was, before I even heard of who he was, to be honest, I didn't come across chemdog cuts, the chemdog or the chemd or any of the chem family. I didn't get that from any of the chemdog family, I got it outside of that, coincidentally, as I mentioned before. Okay, so then, that cut was with us, and what happened was, it's really a cute story, actually. So what happened was I was going through a divorce. At the time, I had a home in Oakland I was working in. I had a home in Sebastopol I was working in. Actually, I had two homes in Sebastopol, California that I was working in. So that's about an hour difference drive. I was also an apprentice, an electrical worker apprentice at the time. And I was working a lot. And there's always a lot of commuting and construction. My ex-wife wanted me to get a real job at some point because cannabis wasn't a real job, I guess. I mean, there's always risk with cannabis, and, she felt that the danger was affecting, our family's, security and happiness and just kind of our day-to-day. So I succumbed, and I became an apprentice in the electrical industry with the IBEW. And so I was working a lot, and I had a partner in Oakland that he was living there, and I was living there half-time. We had a basement full of herb. And one day he approached me and said, hey, there's this guy named Joe Brand, and he, the guy who popped the chemdog seed, asked if we wouldn't mind giving him a cut of the chemdog 91. And I didn't know any of the story. So he told me the story, and I was like, huh, that's an interesting story. I'd never actually, this is 2006, mind you, I'd never actually heard about all the stuff that happened at Deer Creek. And it's odd. It's kind of weird to think about, but it's true. I wasn't really privy to that stuff. My experience with chemdog, was outside of that. It had nothing to do with those folks, That's just the way it is, And so, he explained to me, and I said, well, yeah, of course, sure, like that's kind of cool. He's, he explained to me that the guy was kind of, all these people, of course, were out of contact with each other. It was all chance meetings. And then here we are in 2006, I think it was 2006, could have been 2005, where where a lot of these folks could get in contact with each other. And, I appreciated that, even though I wasn't part of that, I appreciated that. And so I said, yeah, sure. I think we have some cuttings in the basement that are rooting. And, he had to ask me for my permission. I had a lock on that cut. So I said, yeah, sure. And then I went to work in Napa. And I was working at the Napa High School doing the lighting there, looked good. And, so I said, yeah, sure. Well, a little backstory. So my roommate at the time and I've known him for a long time, like we used to be very close, and we've known each other since the Grateful Dead days. And, that's our history. There's a lot of nostalgia, yada, yada. So, and he's a chem head, he loves it and he gets it. And he actually knew G, and that's why they were able to talk. They actually met each other on the East Coast. They kind of grew up in the same area in the Northeast. And so, I agreed. And I just went to sleep and woke up, went to work the next day. Well, what had been going on in the background is that my roommate was selling packs of Chem 91 that he was getting from another grower in our area, and I was surprised by that because I know the guy, and he asked me for the cut, and I said no, of course, and it appeared, according to my roommate, that he had obtained a cut somehow, and I was curious about, like, how is that possible? Wasn't really, didn't have the time or energy to even really give a damn, but I was curious, and every night I would come home from work, and I would see turkey bags of what he was saying was Chem 91. Now, as far as I'm concerned, he should know what Chem 91 is, right? It's his favorite. All of us are like chemdog heads in my little circle, and he's certainly in that, And so, that was that. And so I came home from work the next day, and I said, did your buddy come over? He's like, he did. I said, did you give him a cut? Because I went down to the basement. I don't see any cuts going on anywhere. He goes, well, I was over at my homie's house, who I've been getting these packs of Chem 91 from, and he had a rooted cutting right then and there. And I said, hey, I think I got, SkunkVA's permission, but let me just go ahead and grab one. You got a nice, healthy, rooted one here. And he was picking up some packs of Chem 91, I think. And so that's how he got it. And then he passed it to JB. And so that's that. And well, I came home from work, and he told me that. And I said, huh. And I was still very curious about this Chem 91 cut that I had, why would they ask me if they already got it, right? And he was opening up turkey bags right at that moment. And I was in the dining room, and he was in the kind of a darkened living room. And he's like, I said, is that Chem 91 that you've been, kind of rocking the last few weeks, packs? He said, yeah. I said, that's not Chem 91. He goes, what? He goes, you're, in another room. How could you? I said, you should know better than that. Look at that. I can see from here it's not Chem 91. So I walked in the room. I took the bud from his hand, the one he was smelling. I smelled it. And I threw it back in the bag. I said, you should know better. That's not Chem 91. And then his eyes got big as, headlights. And he was like, oh, my God. I said, I'm going to bed. And so I said, so that's the cut you gave that guy that you asked me about? He said, it sure is. And his jaw hit the floor. And, I don't know what to say about all that. I mean, it's funny, like the power of suggestion, I think, is very strong, with any of us. And so I think that's what a good case of that, And so, like I said, I had already been familiar with that particular cut. We had been rocking it for a while. And we rocked it along, after that, separate from this partnership that I'm describing to you. And, it just kind of, I didn't really think much of it. And then later on, I had maybe, I don't remember what happened to the one I had, the cut of the sour diesel IBL, but it just kind of went away somehow. I don't remember. And years later, someone, I heard that there was a cross that Bodie had made of the Chem 91, but he had started to call the mother the JB cut, the Chem 91 JB cut, a Joe Brand cut. And I was like, oh, that's the same thing. And then I got the cut. Someone on the East Coast who prefers to stay, anonymous, he sent me the cut, and it was the same fucking cut. It was the same one that we used to rock, and we used to really get good yields from it. And so, then Bodie had kind of coined the phrase JB cut, which I love that. You know what I mean? I think it's great because that happened in my house. You know what I mean? And I thought that was kind of cool. So I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. I always wanted to make a cross with it. I love Sour Diesel. I love chemdog. It's just a little bit stronger, vigorous, version of Sour Diesel, but it has all that stuff in there. And so, when I got it, I couldn't wait to make a cross with it. And luckily, it came out, and it's not chemdog on chemdog because it's not chemdog on chemdog. It's very unique. It's one of my favorite crosses that I've made to smoke, to grow out. It's easy to grow, easy to smoke, and it just punches you in the face. It's great. You know what I mean? So that's the story on it.
Hell yeah, it's one that's piqued my interest just hearing that. And in a question or two before, you mentioned the old NLs and how the chem does remind you of that. I'd be interested to hear, we've seen a bit of a resurgence of NLs, both in terms of some seed offerings, but even just other breeders talking about how they would love to get some of those NL lines they tried in their youth back into the stable. Do you have any fond memories of NLs? Have you ever wanted to explore that realm at all?
Oh, yeah. When I was a young man in Virginia, I got, as a 17-year-old, a minor, which is kind of a key to my life, that I was a minor, I got in trouble. I got in big trouble. I got in trouble for possession and distribution of LSD. And, they wanted to charge me as an adult. And I had to jump through a lot of hoops to not be charged as an adult. I had a good friend who was 18 that night who got set up by the same snitch, and so he actually had a very different outcome because he was 18, and I had gotten in trouble when I was 17, probably about 5 months before I turned 18. I'm thinking, roughly, yeah. And but they still wanted to charge me as an adult. This is heyday drug war, 1990, I think, yeah. And very, very aggressive law enforcement, very aggressive, like, war on drugs in Virginia, especially. And they were going to, maybe he got 18 years suspended for 18 years to give you a comparison, whereas I had an opportunity to not really do any jail time or not really do much jail time as a minor, or do maybe some hard time. 5 or 6 years is what they were saying. And, they were talking about putting a 17-year-old in a cage with grown men, It's not, I could never imagine a crime to where a child, even, someone who's about to become an adult, should belong in a cage with, adults. It's just, you're guaranteeing you're, destroying that person's future. And so my attorney, which was like a court-appointed attorney, unfortunately, because we were poor ass, fought hard for me to make sure that didn't happen, understanding that was going to negatively impact my life forever. So, so back then, we had, in Virginia, we had the Super Skunk, we had NL, which turned out to be NL1, I believe, and we had the Nigerian, we called it the Nige, we had the Afghani, a couple different Afghanis. These were all like stuff you would find in the seed catalogs. This is stuff that became the legend of cannabis. We were right at ground zero. I don't know how, but we were. Beatrix Choice, of course, I've talked to you about that one before. So those were the ones. And so it had a hierarchy. You could find Nigerian easier, Nige, quicker, Afghan, quicker. And that's just what we called it. There was obviously more to the names than that. That's just what we called it. That's all I got in my memory. And then the harder ones would be, and then the Super Skunk, and then you would get to the NL, and then, of course, the Beatrix Choice was the holy grail, the hardest to find. But these were roughly the strains that we could find, and they were primo. They were the best. I mean, this is what makes a young, person fall in love with cannabis, And so the Northern Lights, so I was on probation from that charge, right? My guy sent me to, he said, you're going to have to go to a rehab, which was pretty vogue back in the late 80s, early 90s. And you're going to have, and you're going to have to, you're going to have to play the part. You were addicted to marijuana. and you were addicted to LSD, you were addicted to psilocybin, that's your story. You're going to stick to it. You're going to fucking beat it with a drum. This is going to save your life. And he convinced me as a young man. So I did. And it was an interesting experience. That's where I met the man who became, and to this day is my mentor, who made the Super Skunk as we know it, the F2, the number 6, as a lot of these, people out here call it, who, want to know somebody. And so we, he approached me at one of these NA meetings, and he handed me a Grateful Dead tape. Now, he's an adult, and I'm a minor in a facility where people are coming off the street for an NA meeting, And we were forced as the minors to go to this. Of course, it's part of the program, fine. And he knew that we weren't allowed to have anything to do with Grateful Dead. Grateful Dead music or paraphernalia, meaning like T-shirts, signias, symbology, it was all considered drug paraphernalia, not allowed, right? So as a minor in this place, you're a child, you're not allowed to have a Grateful Dead bootleg tape. So I'm at this meeting. This is what I'm doing to try to save my life, according to my attorney, mind you. And so I'm at it. I go up, as anyone who's ever been to these things know that coffee's the big thing. So I'm at the thing getting the coffee. It's 7 p.m. at night. You got people off the street. You got the adults who are inpatients there, and they're not allowed to talk to the minors. Like, it can be a big problem for them. They can get kicked out of the program. But then I'm at the coffee thing, and a man taps on my shoulder, and he said, "Don't turn around." So I didn't turn around, and he handed me a Grateful Dead tape. He goes, "I hear you youngins aren't allowed to have these." And I said, "No, we're not." And he goes, "Well, here you go." And I shoved it down my pants. That turned out to be the guy who made the F2, the Super Skunk, my mentor. It was kind of a chance thing, That's how I met him. But so when I was after I got out, I was on probation. I went through my case. I became on probation. I had to quit smoking. I had to stay in town. It was very strict. I had to be known where I was at all the time. And so I remember we went up to some friends of mine, and everyone was on board. They were like, "If you smoke, you're going to go to prison, and so don't smoke." And I said, "Well, what am I not going to hang out? Like, what are we doing here?" And they're like, "We're going to help you with this." I mean, wasn't really stated, but it was kind of loosely stated that we're just not going to smoke around him, JK, that's me. And we're just going to help him not hurt his own self. So that's what it was. But, however, at the end of this period of time in probation, I was, all my friends, my circles were heading up to Boston, to the Boston Gardens to see the Grateful Dead there. In 1991, it would have been at this point. And so I convinced them to let me go, even though that was, could have been dangerous for me as far as my probation goes. And this is serious. Like, people hear probation now. It was different back then. Like, this was just a simple procedure to get you in prison, This was a way around it. So it was more serious, in my opinion. And so we get up to Boston, and we go to the show, and I'm a good boy. I take a little acid, but I don't smoke any weed. My friends are keeping it away from me to a degree, watching out for me, doing, being good friends. And then after the show, we all pile into a car. It was 6 of us. And all I can do is smell the fucking bag of weed in someone's pocket. And I can't help myself. I'm like, "Can I just look at it, y'all? Show me the bag. I know that smell. Let's just see. Is that the Northern Lights? And they won't say a word, because they know that once that domino starts to fall, all of them are going to fall. Well, on the way to the hotel from the show, some guy took a little too much too fast and took all of his clothes off, as they sometimes do at those events. And, was having a psychedelic experience. It was getting a little too intense for the default world. And so he was surrounded by Boston's finest, the law enforcement. And we all had to wait for this whole movie to unfold as we're trying to just get to the hotel. We're exhausted. And I'm sitting in the car for an hour and a half smelling this bag of weed that no one will show me. It's driving me insane. And so we get to the hotel, and I say, "Listen, I'm smoking that damn joint. I don't give a damn what anyone says. No one's going to stop me. The consequences are mine and mine alone, and I appreciate you. It's not your fault. But when you roll that," and they roll that $50 eighth of Northern Lights, that sticky, icky, gooky, goodness, into a $50 fucking joint with a club, a nice wrap. It was a beautiful joint. I can picture it in my mind right now. And we smoked that motherfucker. It was the first time I'd smoked in a whole year. And everyone passed out almost immediately. But when you haven't smoked weed in that long and your tolerance down, it's a much different effect, as we all know. And I turned on that Kung Fu Theater, And I laughed my fucking ass off until I practically pissed my pants, tears streaming down my eyes. It was probably the best joint I ever smoked in my life. And I had smoked it before. It was the Northern Lights, as we called it. And I asked them, I was like, where'd y'all get this? And they said, well, we got it here in the parking lot. But the parking lot was flooded. And you know whose weed this is. And we don't really know the guy's name, but we knew it was from Virginia. And they said, I was like, this is from Richmond, right? And they said, yeah, sure enough it is. It was everywhere. They started opening up to me about it now that it's too late. And they told me all about it, you know. And they're like, it is better than ever. And, you know, yeah, let's smoke it. So we did. And so that's my memory of it. It'll stick with me forever. Of course, I had memories of it before because we used to smoke it. But that was so significant in my life, you know, because it was exciting, you know. I was once again breaking the fucking law. And, you know, rightfully so. So I smoked that joint. And luckily, I got off probation within 30 days. When I got off probation, I was already on Jerry Garcia's band's East Coast tour, which was, you know, amazing. And so, you know, that was it. And I never got drug tested again. I went back to my final probation meeting. And I didn't get tested, and I was grateful for that. And that was that, you know.
That's brilliant. And so obviously you've had this very memorable and impactful experience with the NL1. Recently we hear a lot of chat about the NL5 making a resurgence from a few different seed sources. You've got Matt and Caleb who have done theirs. You've got Todd McCormick. Has the NL5 ever held a similar reminiscent spot in your mind, or was it really just that NL1?
It was just that NL1. It was, and we just knew it as NL, Northern Lights, you know. I'm speculating when I call it NL1 based on what I've seen since then. It's one of the holy grails in my world. And so, like, that particular cut, you know. But the ones that I've seen that folks have been kind of working with maybe since then, it's a little convoluted to me, like exactly, you know, where did it come from? How did it get there? Is it the same cut? I don't know. But the similarity is there, and it's clear. And so I go with it, you know. And the NL5 is not, it's not quite, this is my perception. When you had that Northern Lights, let's just call it Northern Lights because that's what we called it back then. Let's be accurate. When you had that, to go to the NL5, it's just not the same, you know. It's got a similar name, but it's a much different pheno, you know. And so, like, it's just not in that avenue that I fell in love with, just to be truthful, you know. So, yeah, it's more common, and maybe that's skewed my perception a little bit, too, because I love, like, the rarities of some cuts, you know. Like, I'm drawn to the rarity of things, you know, like, how did it make it this far? But ultimately, the experience when you smoke it, that's what it is. And I just can't compare the two. I don't feel like they're even in the same ballpark. That's just my opinion, you know?
Sure.
And I've got, Matt was nice enough to send me some of those seeds that you're speaking of, and I can't wait to go through them, but I haven't yet.
Yeah, nice. That'll be cool to see what comes out of that. And I mean, in that same vein, we've seen some Skunk One seeds pop their head out, as well as some original haze. Do either of those ones hold a spot in your mind, or you just didn't really get exposed to them?
Original haze would be out of my wheelhouse, but when it comes to skunk, that's right in my wheelhouse. And I hate to tell y'all, it's not there. We don't have it. It's gone. At least from my perception. Everyone's got a different opinion about it. We can fight about it if you want, but I've been around a long time, and I know what skunk smells like, and I think we all do. If you live in North America, you know what a skunk smells like. So if you don't smell that when you smell the weed, be careful calling it skunk, because we all know what a skunk smells like. It's not like, you know, gardenia. Do you know what a gardenia smells like?
Sure.
Me too, but not everybody does. But everyone knows what a skunk smells like, right? And so if we don't smell that, let's be honest with ourselves, okay? You know? So, and yeah, you know, that sounds horrible to say, but it's true. We have to be honest. And like that smell that the super skunk had, that was what they called. We didn't call it roadkill skunk. I was right in the middle of all this stuff. We didn't call it that. You can call it that now. I know what you mean. Yeah, it's accurate. But that name comes from modern times. It doesn't come from back in the late 80s, early 90s, right? You know, skunk it was just skunk, you know? And so, like, you know, real growers in Virginia, the ones that really put it all on the line back then, the ones that really did what they wanted to do in spite of United States laws, Virginia state laws, draconian drug laws, those are the guys that were growing it. And what worse strain to grow than Super Skunk or Skunk One, Basic Skunk? What would be worse for you to grow in a place that, there's no such thing as a carbon filter, remind you. So what did they do? They take that dead skunk that they found on the highway, that they scooped up and put in a garbage bag, and they throw it in front of their fucking house until someone came and cleaned it up, and then they go get another one until their house didn't smell exactly like that skunk. And the reason they did that is because that smell was so similar to that dead skunk that, it worked, right? Well, we all know what skunk smells like, and like we have to be honest for ourselves when we describe things and each other. It's just not around anymore. I don't know why, but it's not around,
Sure. Well, look, I guess that answered my next question, which was going to be, do you have any leads on the Super Skunk? But I guess if we zoom out a bit, there has been a bit of discussion in the community around the Super Skunk that is passed around, and whether the mass Super Skunk, as we call it, was the same as the original one that you first had. What's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are my experience, and my experience is this. So you call him Staten Island, but we were very, he's my mentor, my brother. He's someone I love. We've known each other for a long time. He's responsible. He's who I got the chemdog from. He's the one who taught me everything that he knew at the moment. He's the one that I kind of linked up with some very private growers in Virginia where they traded Super Skunk for chemdog, and he traded the chemdog for the Super Skunk. Based on all the stories I tell him about, it's like the one that got away, like the Super Skunk, you got to check it out. Of course, he had heard of it, but he hadn't seen it. So when he brought it back, he told me that he'd passed it around some other folks in the tri-state area. It didn't matter to me. I'm just a kid, mind you. And, I was just grateful to kind of make the connection or be part of it, or just, the joy, like show my friends in Virginia and him that like I care about this stuff. It's not just don't want to smoke the joints. I want to be, if what I can do to help. And it's not like when you're that young, you don't think too much into it. You just do what your role is. And so, anyways, and he brought the Super Skunk back out to Sonoma County where we were at, and was very grateful. And that's where it went. But we did lose it. And I remember the day. I have so many details in my memory. We did lose it. And I want to say, 1998, I think is when it was. It was very early on, Luckily, I'd passed it up to some people in Humboldt County, maybe 2 or 3 years before that, in 1995-ish, when all this happened for me. And so there was always a possibility we could go get it again. The people I passed it to didn't have it anymore. They had passed it to another guy who was going to give it back to me, right? That never actually happened. So we kind of lost it, and we went on, and that was that, and it's one of the saddest, most regretful things that I've ever experienced in my life is, losing that cut. And so then, fast forward to 2006 when I met G, chemdog. I met him because I think I told you before in the previous story, but so I won't get into that. But when I went out, I was going to get the Chem Sis, and I mean the real original Chem Sis, and bring him back some chemdog cuts, some healthy, good chemdog cuts. So I did, and as I've said before, and so what he ended up giving me was the Chem D, and the Super Skunk, as he put it to me. And I said, the Super Skunk. And I was surprised when he gave it to me because this wasn't part of the deal. And he said, yeah, the one that you guys brought up back then, in 1992 or 3. And I was like, wow, right on. I didn't know, And so he didn't call it the Mass Skunk. He didn't call it the MSS. He just called it the Super Skunk, And so I took it back home. I flew it back home to California and grew them out. And I've told you about the Chem D, whatever. This was, my big hope. I was like, wow, what a bonus. Like, this is going to be great. We had been missing this cut. We gave up on it. We let it go. We mourned over it. You know what I mean? And so I grew it out, and I immediately noticed the stretch wasn't there. The Super Skunk I've shown pictures on my Instagram, and, I've documented what the Super Skunk was in photo. I mean, as good a photos as you could take in 1995 with a camera. And so, the stretch wasn't there. Alarming, but there was a little bit of resemblance in the structure, so I went with it. And then I just kept on waiting for that smell, kept on waiting, and it just never appeared. And in 2006, like as best as I knew, and I want to say that best as we knew, but I'll say as best as I knew, there was a thing called genetic drift, you know. Maybe that's what happened to it. But it was such a painful memory of something that was gone that wasn't it, that I just said, you know what, I don't want this cut. I'm going to let it go. I'm not interested in it. It's not it. If it is it, it's not the same. I'm letting it go. And that's not like me. I don't let cuts go like that. But I did, only after one cut. And so that was the end of it. And then, you know, I was kind of like, damn, dude, I didn't even get the chemsys, you know, like, what the fuck, you know? So then fast forward to, say, 2000, let's just say 18 or 19, I can't say. You know, then, you know, of course, now we're hearing about the mass super skunk. And so someone was kind enough on the East Coast to send me, and I don't even, it was almost anonymous, but he definitely had the credentials to have the mass super skunk. He's in Massachusetts. He knows all the people and everything. And so I grew it out, and it was the same fucking cut that I got from G in 2006. I immediately recognized it. Doesn't have the skunk terps, doesn't have all the things I love, and then, you know, I don't even have that cut anymore because it's just, I'm not saying it's a standalone. For some it may, but you have to understand that, like, it just brings up a bad memory for me, you know? It's like a disappointment. No matter how good it is on its own, it's just when you have the perception I have, it's just a disappointment, you know, because, you know, the Super Skunk was the holy grail. It was one of the best cuts that's ever, you know, been on this planet. And so it's just a bad, you know, kind of memory. So I let it go. Now, I do believe, based on what they've told me there, that at one point that Super Skunk cut from Virginia was the cut that we're talking about. I can't say for sure. I don't know. You know, I wasn't around for all those decades in their circle, you know. And so who knows? You know, you'd have to ask them. But to me, it seems like something got mixed up. Because how could that be, you know, the Holy Grail? It's just not that great in my opinion, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe because of my perception, but still. And I'm not trying to dog the cut. Don't send me no hate mail. It's just not my thing. I'm a fucking weirdo, you know.
No, that's good to get some clarification from your perspective for sure. And, you know, while we're on the topic of the Super Skunk, and you even referenced Staten Island guy himself, I get tons of people messaging me, asking me, you know, was that Weasel? Was it this guy? Do you think he's ever going to pop his head out? Will we ever hear from Staten Island? Just from my perspective, seems like he played a huge role in the chemdog story, and people are naturally curious. Is it someone the community knows, or do you think he'll remain a mystery?
The answer is no and yes. No, he's not part of the, you know, no, he's not someone part of the USAID, part of the community. And yes, he seems like he's not interested in all this. He's interested in the work, you know. And so, you know, we've had our falling outs in the past, and we've come together as family members do. And that's us. And I love him with all my heart. And he's meant the world to me, you know. He was not supposed to do what he did with me, you know, but he took a chance on me, you know, and I appreciate that. But he's I don't want to say he's private. I don't really necessarily think he is. He's just not interested in all this, you know. He just wants to do the work. And I can't speak for him, but that's all I can tell you, you know. But no, he's none of those people. He knows them all, but he does not, no. There's a lot of dudes in the weed industry. Well, let's just back it up. I said industry. There's a lot of people who are into cannabis, fine cannabis, who did their work in Staten Island. He's just one of them, you know.
There you go. I love that.
But he knows all the ones you're talking about. Let's just say that.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
And, you know, and furthermore, like, if this was important to him, how many opportunities has he had? You know? Lots, right? And he's never expressed to me that he gives a fuck about any of this. So that's that.
There you go. Well, kudos to you, Mr. Staten Island. We're all appreciative.
We sure are.
I forgot to ask you earlier, you mentioned when you were talking about the strains you would get in Virginia that the Afghani was one in the mix. Is that the Virginia Beach Afghani we see nowadays?
I don't think so. Based off memory, the Afghani was honestly a little bit more like the chemdog than the Virginia Beach Afghani. But I would get, and, you know, and like we called it the Afghan. That's what we called it. But as anyone knows, none of those seeds were really called Afghan. They were crosses, you know, M this, M that. So I can't say which one it was. You know, I can't say, but I can tell you it came from that seed stock. I can pretty accurately say that. Can't say firsthand, but I would guess hard that it was. But the Virginia Beach Afghani, which I have, I love it actually, and it's it's probably not exactly the same. That one had the Afghan had a bit more stretch. The Virginia Beach Afghan is pretty squat, typical Afghan Highland type of strain. This particular pheno of whichever cross it actually was a bit more stretchy, had a bit more smell, had a bit more punch. But it was definitely in the same realm, definitely in the same family. No doubt,
Yeah, killer. Well, while we're on the topic of super skunks, I want to ask you, there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not it's possible that the ChemD is actually just Chem 91 crossed to a super skunk. So the idea is that Chem 91 is in fact the mother of ChemD, and it's possibly just a super skunk herm onto it, something along those lines. What thoughts come to mind when you hear that immediately?
Wheel. My first thought is, does ChemD smell like skunk? No. So, the ChemD to me is an anomaly. Like, I don't know where it came from. I don't know what it is exactly. I can only take what I hear from the people who say they know on face value, but I definitely have questions about what I hear. I mean, all I can do is speculate, and I would say no. It just doesn't, it's just such an anomaly, the ChemD. It's like outside of all of this, it seems to me. Of course, who am I to say what's what as far as and I don't mean the stories. I mean what is possible in genetics, when you make crosses? What kind of recessive genes can pop out and create something that smells like trash, it just doesn't relate to anything. And I don't make any claims. I just have questions, probably more than most people do, about it. It just doesn't make any sense. But I would say no, based on what I know of those two cuts. We've worked with crosses of Super Skunk and ChemD, or chemdog, I'm sorry. And so none of them came out like the ChemD. We had Staten Island, as you call this human. Super dog seeds.
Yep.
It was the first time I'd ever seen weed come from seed, the super dog, and it was phenomenal. It had that skunky terp, it had those chemdog earthy, piney, just dripping goodness, but nothing came out like the ChemD. I'd never smelled anything like the ChemD until I smelled the ChemD, and I could say since then the only things that I have smelled that are like ChemD are crosses made with the ChemD. Dog patch, glue, right? That's a ChemD cross. GMO's got some ChemD in it, right?
I think GMO's ChemD. I think Gorilla Glue uses a different chem cut.
Well, I'm not really that familiar, but I grow the GMO here, and I can say, yep, that's it. There's no doubt. We call them trash terps here. We call them fucking disgusting trash terps. And I tell people, say, you're gonna smell this at first, you're not gonna like it. Give it a second, and you're gonna love it. And that's exactly what happens. And I feel like everybody feels this way. It's repulsive yet attractive all at the same time. But it goes in that order. What the fuck? To, man, let me smell that again, So we didn't come across any of those, and I've taken down many of those super dog seed phenos, and they were 2 or 3 different types of phenos. There wasn't anything like ChemD. I never smelled anything like that in cannabis until I actually smelled the ChemD.
Sure. And look, there's a very rigorous discussion around all the various different ChemD cuttings there are, without delving into, trying to identify them from visuals or whatever. Why do you think there are so many different ChemD cuts out there? Do you think it just piggybacks off what you said before, where it's unique, people are looking for their own version, or do you think there's something extra which goes into why we see, I think Matt counted them at one point, and there's something like 7 different ChemD cuts that float around.
Wow, I didn't know that. I've heard there's a few different floating around, but I didn't know that. I only can go to what I can only base it on my experience with cannabis and what I've heard and combine the two, and I would say that most likely cuts got lost and S1s popped up. I just don't know. I really don't know. I try to not speculate. There's enough of that out there. I don't think my speculation needs to be added to the hat. I just don't. And I don't find it to be useful. And I find that speculations usually lead to, nope, that's not it. So I don't really know. I don't know. I just take it on face value, And If I wasn't there, then I don't know. And it's just that simple. And, that allows you for a good night's sleep when you live by this, It's the, the internet detectives who have it all figured out, their version has got it. The phrase I hear that it always makes me pause is, yeah, that makes sense. Well, how does that make sense? Does it make sense genetically? Like, are you talking about recessive genes? Are you talking about combinations of genetics that make a brand new, like, what does it make sense to you? How does it make sense? So that phrase makes me pause, People say it to me all the time. They'll ask me a question and I'll tell them my experience. I'll tell them my life. I'll tell them a story about what happened that I was there for. And then they'll say, that makes sense. I'm like, no, it doesn't. None of this makes fucking sense to anyone, dude. You know what I mean? Like, how does it make sense to you? Because people will have biases. They have perceptions that they hold on to. We all do. It doesn't matter what it is, It could be about anything in life, But we all hold on to that, and we have to be careful with that because we can add a false narrative to a story that's not even ours to tell. And this happens every day in cannabis, as we know. And I just don't want to do that. I don't need to add to that. My experience is limited, but it's also vast. I've had a lot of experience with some of this stuff. Just kind of chance, kind of coincidentally. I'm okay with just sticking with that. I don't need to figure out anything else. I'll let the people, the internet detectives, figure that out, and I'll, enjoy their stories as they come, That's that.
I like it. Diplomatic. Well, look, while we're on the topic, you mentioned the super dog, and we're talking about strains from sort of yesteryear. Are there any strains from the Sonoma Bay Area, Mendo sort of area in that 95 to 2005 period that you miss that aren't the super skunk? Maybe strains that don't get as much of a mention, but you do remember, like, oh, that was a good one. I kind of wish we had that.
Jeez. Man, my answer is probably pretty boring to that because we were so delved into our chemdog, Like, when I got the sour diesel, I was like, wow, look at this, and it had already been around. I didn't even get that cut until, like, let's say 2002, 3-ish, I think, my perception is kind of, you have to understand that, like, I lived in a bubble, like, I wasn't out here in the world like, hey, man, like, this is what we're doing. We were very private. Like, we lived in the old school, by the old school rules. Like, we don't talk about this stuff. There's no deal. Now, the downside of that was, like, maybe we didn't get introduced to a lot of cuts. But the answer to that question in the Bay Area would have been that super silver haze cut that I mentioned before. That was a standout. It was outside of our lane, outside of our realm, but it was lovely, beautiful, and just amazing smoke. So that would be the first thing that pops to my mind. I mean, of course, like when I discovered OG Kush, I was probably a little bit around that era, like 2003. And that may have been a little late in the OG Kush story, right? So to me, in my perspective, in my little bubble, like, wow, this is amazing, And so that would fall in that category. So these answers aren't like sexy. They're not fucking fun. But that's the answer, Like, I was just in a bubble. Like, we were just growing super skunk, chemdog, and eventually sour diesel. But, like, we were stuck in that, my little circle.
No, totally understandable if that's what you were working with, and it was sort of almost on the forefront in a sense, but because no one really knew how good chem was at that time. It's only now I feel like it's really in the zeitgeist.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I was diehard. I just grow what I like, like, I don't pay attention to the outside noise. I never did, to my own detriment. And I mentioned this before. And so, like, I would push, like, and I mean push, I'd be like, check this chemdog out. And I would get the same response, like, I don't want to look at that. I've already seen it. I'm not interested in it. Do you have any sour diesel or OG Kush? I'm like, geez, man, no, I got a big fucking tub full of this, check it out. It's amazing. Just look. No, I've already seen it. And it's because they'd already seen the fakes, they've already seen the fake cuts. And it was not just one, there was many, and it was frustrating. It was kind of heartbreaking because my favorite weed wasn't good enough for everybody else anymore, What was? Well, OG Kush and sour diesel. I'm like, well, if you like those, you're going to like this. So that's kind of it, Like, I was in a bubble. I kept myself there for better or for worse. And that's just my perspective,
No, it makes sense totally. And you mentioned the sour diesel. I wanted to quickly ask you, the diesel therapy seems like it's also got quite a cult following. It's a bit of a powerhouse in terms of the fan demand. What do you think it is about this cross that seems to be grabbing people's attention? Because, I mean, I don't know the back end, but it seems extremely popular.
It is. It surprised me. And, when you make, when you decide to make several crosses, you just never know what the users are going to like, and that one surprised me a little bit. But it's just, I think what it is, I think sour diesel, I know sour diesel, it comes and goes in popularity, and it's very popular right now, like you can go across the board, you can look at all kinds of stuff that's out there from what I can see that it's very desired right now. And it doesn't surprise me. It's one of the best strains that's ever, come across the scene. And so I think that's what it is, I don't think it's anything else. I think that's what it is. And the East Coast Sour Diesel is a great representation of what sour diesel can be, as far as like, the way it looks, the way it smells, the effect. And the East Coast Sour Diesel is a little easier to deal with than the, I dare to say original sour diesel, because that's probably not even the right way to describe it. But it's a little easier to grow. It's a little shorter, a little stouter, a little stockier. It's a little bit less stretch. Well, it's a lot less stretch, really. And so that was what made it a good candidate. Of course, I'm always fucking around with sour diesel shit. I love it, But if I was like and I think that chemfuego is going to give you all the traits that you're going to look for in sour diesel. But maybe because it doesn't have the name up front, maybe that's what it is. So I think that's what it is. I think it's the name, People want to, bring that fuel, that diesel, that fire, right back in. And so there it is,
100%. Look, we're going to have to drill down into some of the strains, because in the last chat we did, these weren't really released. And so people have accumulated their questions. And I guess on the topic of experimenting with new crosses, a lot of people are really keen on the Tropicana Cherry cross you've been posting about, and you've also done some hybrids with the apple fritter. I guess in general you could say that you're bringing some new genetics into the library, making some crosses with some more sort of modern stuff. What's been your take on this, and what crosses have sort of caught your eye?
I'm trying to expand and kind of get more experience with some of the newer crosses, or the newer, hybrids that are out there, like the ones you mentioned. And I like a lot of them. They're outside of my wheelhouse. They're outside of my, the things that I like about cannabis. But I'm okay with that. I'm open to it. And so I thought I was being kind of unique making those crosses, and now it looks like a lot of breeders have been working with especially those two cuts. But we've tested them out. We our testing, we move at a certain pace. We have a flow here. I have a flow. And it might be a little more slower than some. And so we're here. We've tested it out. We really like it. I like it, So we've released them, or we're getting ready to release them. And I'm really happy with them, And I get a little bit of pushback from the chemdog heads out there about it. But that's okay, We can't make everyone happy all the time. But we want to, kind of cross. It's like an opportunity to take the old school and cross it into the new school, and kind of show the new school what the old school is all about in a cross, and how things can be improved, especially in the area of potency and also in flavor, I hate to say. But we succeeded there. And so that's the idea. And maybe we're always a little late to the game. We always have been. But we do it right. I do it right. We do it right. And those two are the result of that. And we're going to release them later this month,
Ooh, that's exciting. And I mean, you just referenced the diehard chem heads. And one of the questions I have received a few times over the past few years, probably one you get quite a lot, is will people ever be able to get a pure chem line from you? Maybe like a BX4, a BX5, just straight 91.
Well, we did make a BX4 selected. And I've mentioned this to folks before. He was doing pretty good in the crosses, and he was the one that we were probably going to test a lot of his progeny, his brothers and sisters out, and say, okay, this is the Chem BX that we're going to release. However, in 2019 in Sonoma County, Most of the county, and I mean literally almost all the county, got evacuated due to fire. Another fucking wildfire fueled by the El Diablo winds. It's his nightmare. And during that, of course, when you have a genetic library in, full growing mother state outside of tissue culture, you're going to not be able to leave your home unless you want to lose big time. So although the emergency services, sheriff's department, fire department, and others were coming through the area where we were keeping the library, I was keeping the library. When I say we, I mean me, but it's a habit. So we were basically hiding from the emergency services and not evacuating. Now, anybody listening to this should take those wildfires very seriously. Those fires can move very fast. We had a good vantage point, and I had rooted cuttings, in the bathroom of my RV under a skylight, just in case we had to go, along with the family photos, and the glassware and all the things that matter in life that you cannot replace. And so we were ready to go, but I wanted to keep my mom's going too. Well, however, we did lose the BX4 male. So we have the seed still, but I've decided to kind of put that on hold for now. I want to do the feminized project that we talked about, and I have some other crosses that I've made that I'm testing out. So for space, I'm just leaving that alone. I don't really feel like people are going to be getting what they expect. I think the expectations of the BX line, released as it is, will be less because, like I said, I'm not trying to recreate chemdog. I'm not trying to put it in seed. I always was trying to make a stud that I could cross with my favorite females that wasn't going to dominate them, but add potency to them, add flavor to them, add that extra little fuel, chem fuel. And so if you were to grow them out, and I have, like you may feel like you're not getting what you want. You know what I mean? Because my goal was not to recreate chemdog in seed form. So, but to answer your question, yeah, I will be doing that work, but I have to kind of start from where I had started a couple years ago. And then I'm going to have to gear it towards that. And so that's a little bit different work than creating the studs that I've created in order to make the seeds that I make, the F1 hybrids. I'm going to have to kind of backtrack a little bit, and there's more work involved than people realize. Like, to take all my BX3 seeds, and I have BX4 seeds too, and just say, this is the BX4, it's accurate, but it's also, the goal wasn't to get that to the market. The goal was to create a stud that doesn't overpower every female that comes near. And so if you were to grow them out, you'd be like, wait a minute, So you have to back it up a little bit, and then you have to reselect for different reasons, and then you can continue the work once you find your selections with that goal in mind, right? And so this is a lot more work, This is basically starting over in some ways, not completely starting over, but maybe going back to the BX3 generation and selecting for different traits, which certainly could happen. And then, maybe taking it in a different direction, instead of going back into backcross, maybe start to create filial generations that are geared towards that goal, which I think is be a better, more like a more what's the word? Like that would be a more accurate way of doing it at this point, like an IBL essentially, And so this is years and years and years of work, I don't really think that a BX3 or a BX4 chem at this point is really useful to anybody. I don't think it's going to be as great as anyone thinks. You know what I mean? That's basically what I'm saying. I'd rather select brother and sister and move forward that way, from one of the generations. And I haven't begun that work yet. Well, I backed up. I have begun the work, but I haven't narrowed it down. This is big work. This is important work to do what you're asking or what you're suggesting. And so I just haven't, that's a lifetime, and we are not going to do her dirty. We're not going to try to make a quick buck on a BX3. We're not doing that, So that's the answer. We're not going to do that. We're going to probably go a different route. We're going to select from filial generations, F1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way. Wherever it is, that's where it will happen. We're doing the background. Truthfully, we're not really focused on it right now. I'm not focused on it right now.
Sure. It's a great and a very comprehensive answer. Very much related, but one I got from two different of our Patreon listeners was sort of in that same vein. they wanted to know, of what's currently available, what do you think best embodies the chemdog? If someone was saying, look, what's just something that's going to give me a really good idea of what chemdog is, which strain would you recommend?
That's really easy. So it's going to be Gorilla Fume, you know. Not by design, but kind of by design. And it's also going to be double crush, you know, which, you know, the Road Dog, like we talked about before, it's kind of close relative, very close relative. That one's kind of taken over in that realm. But I would say the double crush and certainly the Gorilla Fume. The Gorilla Fume, when someone asks me, that's immediately the answer, you know. You're going to find a lot of phenos that are very similar to the chemdog, you know. So that's what it is, you know. What I meant by that is that the BX3 is not as chemdoggy as the Gorilla Fume of the best phenos, you know. So that's the answer. Like the Gorilla Fume, I always tell people, that's chemdog in seed form, you know. That's as good as it's going to get, you know. We can probably do better, but, you know, we haven't yet, you know.
Sure. And look, just in the last question, you were talking about the different chemdog males you have and playing around with filial breeding. I think you mentioned to me that you've been playing with a new male, a Master Kush hybrid. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah. So we have a new release coming out. Lucky Dog Seed Co. does, you know, sometime Christmassy maybe, depending on if we can come up with some names. We're not real good at that. Well, maybe we're good at it, but it takes time. But so we have Grandmaster Chem is our new one, and that's the Master Kush crossed with the Chemdog BX3 male that we're all familiar with. Well, we happen to have made F2s of that as well. So we're not really planning on doing any extra work with that F2 male, the male that we used in the F2. We do have him around still for obvious reasons because we are happy with that cross and we want to be able to continually make it. So we have it for that reason. Will he go to anything else? Will we further work him? I don't really know that. I don't really have a sense that I will. We just, you know, we wanted to make that F2. You know, we wanted to because we saw some diversity, but we love the diversity. So we wanted to kind of narrow it down in the F2 generation. And I think we did that. I feel like we narrowed it down from, say, 7 or 8 phenos down to 5, 4, 3, somewhere in there. And that's more what we're trying to do. So that's why we did it. And we've done it with other crosses that I've made, but not the same success that we're having with that guy and his partner. So, you know, that's kind of it. You know, that's why we're making that one, because it was one of the ones that was going to go in the drawer that I mentioned before, and we fell in love with some of the phenos. We're like, well, okay, what do I do? Well, let's make an F2, you know, let's see if we can narrow it down. We did, you know. We're not going to release the F2 yet because we have to do more testing, but we're ready to release the F1. We got Grandmaster Chem. We think it's kind of catchy, and we think people are going to love it, you know.
That's exciting. I mean, Master Kush is one you don't hear of as much these days, so good to see that making a comeback. I've got a similar sort of question for you in a sense to the last one in terms of the recommendation of the chem. What would you recommend if you can't know any specifics about the grower, you don't get to find out anything about their preferences, you can only recommend one pack. So I guess in essence what I'm saying is, what pack do you think is like broad appeal, most people are going to be into it? What is your cookie cutter that you would recommend?
Did you say cookie cutter? What? It's almost like you're subliminally trying to get the answer. I mean, that would be the Schism. The Schism's made. Schism is the only seeds that I've made that have some of that cookie in it. It's got the OG KB crossed to the Sour Band. So the male in that cross, the tits is what it's called. This is the shit. It is the male to the Sour Band male used in that cross is direct progeny, direct brother and sister to the female that I used in the the Kim Fuego, the Sour Band that's used in the Kim Fuego. So they're directly related in that sense. And the Schism is a cross between the tits and the BX3 male, right? And so, honestly, it's one of my favorites, even though I'm not a big cookies guy. I just love that fucking cross. I say this with 100% confidence, every single Schism seed that I ever popped and grew out, I would have kept as a clone only, no doubt. And that's me saying it, 100%. Now, I can't tell you why it hasn't been, the Kim Fuego is our most popular. The dog patch is up there for obvious reasons, Sour Band, right? But that schism is just off the chain. Easy to grow. It's got both worlds. It's got the new and the old mixed perfectly. All phenos, like you're going to be happy. So that's the answer, like it's interesting, but that's the one that you're.
I love it. And as one of the few people who's been lucky enough to try the rare tits cut, it's truly a special cutting, and I'm sure that pairing is going to tick a lot of boxes. So let's do an adaptation of one of the questions we asked you last time. So in our last chat, I asked you if you had a time machine, like what would you go back and get? So now I'm going to modify that question a little bit, right? Let's just say those El Diablo wins had knocked out your entire library. You lost absolutely everything. Turn up and I say, I've got the time machine for you, but you can only bring back 1 pack of Lucky Dog seeds, and you're going to restart the company with a male, presumably from this 1 pack of seeds. What pack of seeds are you going to restart the company with?
That's a good question. The male?
Oh, I mean, you could do whatever you want to restart the, but I presume you're going to get a reg pack and get a male.
That's a good question. I like that. It got my head going here. I would say, oh man, that's a tough one. I don't know. I like that schism. I don't know. Like it depends on what I was trying to do. Like if I was going to go back to, working with chemdog and trying to put chemdog in seed form, it would be Gorilla Fume. It would be. It's special like that. But I tend to want to answer it a different way, but that's probably the answer. I would want to do that because it's chemdog, and that's what I'm into. That's my thing. I love it, and nothing, meshes with my brain chemistry better. And I think a lot of us agree. Once we experience that, like it's hard to. It's always going to be compared to everything else as we move forward. So maybe that would be it. But also, like the Bohemian Highway comes to mind, which has really, literally been one of my least sought after. Which has always surprised me because it's fire. And the people who did buy it, they always come back, I had a farm up in Philo, California, Mendocino County, who I don't know where they got the pack from. It wasn't from me, but they got it from a seed bank. And then they reached out to me, and they're a farm, they're a legal farm. And they wanted to get quite a bulk of that. And then I was like, finally, someone recognized, what this cut is. So I would say that kind of makes me think about that one, but I can't get away from the fact that I would want to try to get back to the chemdog as fast as I could, and then that would be the Gorilla Fume, Yeah,
great answer. And I mean, maybe there'll be some overlap with the answer for this one, but a lot of the time people are interested. Obviously, yield for some people is very important. What do you think is the most commercially viable, in the sense that it's a good compromise of potency, yield, all the different aspects that would make it suitable for production?
I don't know. I guess I would try to, I would think about one that has a good, really solid yield, easy to grow. It's not going to be complicated. It's not going to compete in a negative way with other strains or phenotypes you have in your garden. And it would be the schism. It would be. You can't beat the potency. It's the mother's so unique. You can't really pin her down. You can't say, oh, this is a cookie strain. Yeah, it's got that in it, but oh no, this is a, sour diesel headband crop. You can't pin it down, but it's got big yields. It's, resistant to pressure, pest and otherwise. And it's really consistent and easy to grow. It's very fast to find a pheno. I was surprised by it. I knew it was going to be interesting. I had no idea that it was going to be so consistent and stable as far as like traits that we all love, in this moment in cannabis in America or otherwise. So I would have to say that one,
Perfect. Great answer. So you've got me wondering what's on the horizon for Lucky Dog Seed Co. or more generally for SkunkVA. You've gone from seed to dispensary. What do you plan to do next?
So, and here's the deal. So, like, I see, like, a need for good, clean, legacy genetics. And it doesn't have to necessarily mean it's old. That's not what I mean. But, like, good representations of what we all agree cannabis is, And so there's a lot of stuff out there. Not all of it's going to make it to the next day. Not all it's going to make it to the next phase. There's a lot of hype. So for me, like I love doing lab work. I love working under the hood, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a scientist, but I know how to do some of the stuff that we do. And so like we are going to be introducing VA labs to the community. And so let me start from the beginning. So tissue culture, we all know what it is. We're all familiar with why we would want to do it. We all understand the reasons why it exists. We either want to do long-term storage of genetics. We want to clean up genetics, meristem tissue culture. And who knows what's next, like there are some viruses that can be passed on to the meristem rather easily. And so therefore, that's not necessarily going to be a cure. But to me, and I first did tissue culture in 2005. Staten Island, as you call him, gave me a kit, and he said, figure this out and tell me, tell me why this is useful to cannabis. And I did what he asked, and my answer was I can't really tell you what it's useful for. I can say that transportation around the globe would be definitely at the top of the list. And this is 2006. These are things, the issues that are actually, being dealt with tissue culture, propagation, they weren't really present at the time. We weren't aware of some of the viroids. We weren't, there's a bunch of stuff, we were still on that genetic drift thing. And so that's what the answer was. So I've been familiar with it on that level. I've done other work with other, I guess you call them plants, under sterile conditions, under flow hoods, sterile air. So I'm familiar with the process. And so what I'm doing is I want to what I did was I wanted to find someone who, I have so many mothers, right now I have 71 different strains in my library. Well, that's not a lot, but it's a lot, And so biggest problem, and it became highlighted here at Lucky Dog Cannabis, is that, geez, how much labor and time and energy and resources go into keeping all those mothers. I'm all about redundancy. Redundancy is how you keep plant alive for 30 fucking years. That's the secret. What is redundancy? Redundancy is overdoing it, never relying on one, always relying on the redundancy system. And so, what I've learned here is it's hard to describe how much energy goes into keeping that ground healthy, vibrant, productive, There's always at least 2 moms. There used to be 4. Now we got it down to 2. To give you an example, it takes up a lot of time, a lot of space, a lot of resource. And I didn't discover that in the last few years. This has been a problem I've had for a long time now. And so when nodal tissue culture became an option for long-term storage, I was very interested in this. The problem is who to do the work? Me? I'm already busy. I got a lot going on. So there's a lot of outside options, outsourcing, I think they call it. So I looked around, and every time I looked into a company that does this type of work, I just couldn't quite pinpoint what their goal was. And it's so when you want to store your library and it's that vast and that large, you want to have peace of mind. The reason you're even thinking about it is because you want to sleep at night without worrying about you want to have life again, basically. You want to be able to go have some fun with your girlfriend, you know what I mean? Or whatever, hang out with your family, take your dog for a fucking trip, whatever it is. It becomes a problem because, you can't really get that freedom. It's not the flower production that takes your time. It's really that. That's what keeps you up at night. If my flower crop goes to shit, I don't lose any sleep over it. I just start over. Well, you can't do that with your library. You lose something, it's gone forever. And whenever that happens to you, it breaks your heart in 5,000 pieces, and you can't put it back together ever again. You just have to kind of mourn it and move on. I've been through it. So nodal tissue culture, as we moved into the modern era, was something that was very interesting to me, very attractive to me. But every time I went and looked at a company that could help me with this, and I tend to do things on my own, so there's that. But it's just, I couldn't figure out what's going to happen next. And then you hear stories. This company did this scandal happened, this fucking bullshit happened. I don't want to be part of that because, like I said, I just want to sleep well at night knowing my shit's safe, These are my kids. These are my dogs. This is my family. It has to be safe. And so I just couldn't trust the system. So I was like, okay, if I want to do this, I have to do it myself, right? Not the decision I want to make, but that's the decision. And so that's where we're at, and that's where VA Labs is popping up from. That's where it was born of. So I took it upon myself to learn the process, nodal tissue culture, meristem tissue culture. Yeah, sure, synthetic seeds. These things aren't that useful to me. They're part of the work, And so, and I'm thinking to myself, it's like, well, maybe there's other preservationists out there that feel the same way. They can't seem to break free of the chain around their damn neck because of their mother's stock. Their mother block is just taking up all their life and time. So maybe I can learn the process, share the process, and that's key. I want to teach other folks how to do this. I feel like that cannabis has had a close call with, say, like hop latent viroid. It snuck into all of our gardens and almost ruined many people's libraries, in the silent of the night. It's kind of a silent killer, and so, what I saw was there's like a use for that. Storing people's genetics is obviously a service that we're going to provide and that we're happy to, but we also feel that it's going to be better to teach people the process, teach companies the process. Anyone who cares about it, we can help them with that, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to be doing, genetic storage. We're going to be cleaning up genetics, all the typical stuff. But also, we're going to be teaching people how to do it themselves, because we realize that that's where that's the biggest need. You're not going to be a company in New York and come out to Montana or California to get your cuts. It's just not practical. So what is practical? Having your own team learn the process, master the process, feel confident, and then you can store your own genetics. What does that do for cannabis? That propels cannabis. That keeps cannabis genetic pool clean and allows anyone who comes across any problems to have the proper skills to do something about it. And then, we've been known to have pretty good reputation, and we're not going to fuck you over. We don't want nothing from you. We already got what you got. So if you want to store it here, we can do that for you. So to be honest, with Lucky Dog Cannabis, what this is, it's a licensed facility. It's a licensed business in the United States. And, I believe personally that national legalization is just a few days away. It's coming quicker than anyone realizes. And once that happens, interstate commerce, when it comes to cannabis, is going to become part of the deal. And what that means is that, it doesn't matter what state we're in. We're all going to be able to help you. We're going to be able to work with you. And that's what the goal is. So, and then furthermore, we want to be able to provide clean, verified clean. How? Well, we're going to be testing it. We're going to be testing it every 2 weeks. We're going to be testing mother stock, your mother stock if you choose. If you're ready to come out of tissue culture and be integrated into, standard propagation practices, we're going to make sure that before that step happens, whatever it is, whether it be ours or yours or whatever it is, it's going to be clean. We're going to make sure of it. And so, the testing has come a long way. Now we're taking root. We're testing the roots in the first few inches of soil at different locations. And, we are investing in, we have a qPCR machine. So we are able, the tests for qPCR machines are pretty readily available for hop latent viroid, for instance, and other pathogens, as long as well as sex testing. We'll be offering all those services. And we feel like that is a good focal point for us to further take the next step with cannabis, and of course there's other ways of doing it. There's other folks doing it out there, but it's just tough to find someone who really gets it, and understands where we're going with all this. And I feel like we do. We get it, We've always been about the plant. We always will be about the plant. And so, if there's, a service that is worth money, great. But that's not exactly why we're doing it. We just want to make sure that cannabis makes it to its next step. That's what I've been doing the whole time, and that's what I'm going to continue doing. And when I saw this kind of opportunity, or kind of this vision to do it, I just couldn't. It's just passion. It's like my passion just went right to it. This is it. This is what we got to do. This is the work we've been waiting for. We've been in this lull between what we've done and what we're going to do, and this is it. So we're doing it.
Wow, that's super exciting. And in all honesty, we could probably spend a whole episode just delving into the specifics of it all. We'll have to keep our eyes open for VA labs. That sounds super cool. We're sort of on the tail end of things, and I have a really good Patreon question I wanted to run by you before we wrap things up, which is basically along the lines of, what does Staten Island think about the fact you've been able to make a really successful company off the back of chemdog? Does he ever talk about wanting to do his own breeding or start his own company?
He is going to be opening a nursery in Northern California, and so where we're at right now, he would like to get Lucky Dog, breeder cuts in the nursery. So that's kind of where we're at,
Yeah.
We all played our role, None of us did anything. We all collectively, what we did was we preserved one of the greatest, the queen of contemporary cannabis is what we've done. We did that. And so, I think that we all are aware of the role we played in the bigger picture. And for any one of us to take a fucking victory lap about what an individual has done would be that's not in the spirit of what we're trying to do. And he gets that, So I think that we're talking about that nursery and how to get unique genetics, and of course Lucky Dog, cuts there. So that's kind of what I would say. I can't speak for other people, but I would say that that's pretty close to what you would hear.
That's really cool to hear, and hopefully as time goes by, people can get access to some killer breeder cuts through his nursery. One of the other Patreon questions we got from a fellow Virginian was, what area of Virginia is SkunkVA from? And as legalization rolls out further, would you ever consider moving back to Virginia?
Absolutely. I always dreamed to sell legal cannabis in Virginia. I'm from Richmond, the south side of Richmond, on the south side of the James River. Chesterfield County was where I grew up. But I did spend some time in Oregon Hill in Richmond. Back when it was a weird place. It's not weird now. It's kind of gentrified. But south side of Richmond is what we call it, the south side, Chesterfield County, I would definitely not consider moving back there. Virginia is a beautiful place. It's one of the most beautiful places in the United States. George Washington National Park is one of the most beautiful places you could ever be. And there's so many other spots, It's an interesting place. It's a diverse place in some ways. And cannabis has always been a really popular thing in Virginia, oddly enough, because it's, you get in a lot of trouble for it over the years. I don't think I would ever move back there, but I would like to kind of do what your listener's suggesting and kind of be part of the, evolution of cannabis there, because I'm from there. I always every time I've ever been busted, I'm always thinking, you motherfucker, I might hire your kids one day, because I know they care about weed more than you hate it, And so that's a little bit of a motivation. But also, yeah, I'm from there, and it's everything that happened in my life stemmed from, growing up there, just kind of coincidentally. And yeah, I think everyone knows now, Virginia is well known for its contribution to cannabis in the United States, through the dark ages especially. So I'm so happy to see that my brothers and my sisters there are able to, more freely express themselves in their love for cannabis without the fear of what can happen, the consequences. And so I would love that. I would love to be part of any kind of, thing that picks up and happens there. It's a slow-moving process, legalization there, just the way they're doing it, but it's happening. And when I go there to visit, because I have gone to some seed events there, and I go back, and I love my people back there. They're good to me, and I just love their passion. I recognize their passion. I see it, the same passion that I came up with, in spite of the law, in spite of what the consequences. I still see it, and I so much love it, So yeah, I would love to be part of it, but I don't think I'll ever live there, so to speak. I'm not big on the humidity. I wasn't when I grew up there, and I'm not still now. So that would be a big one for me,
Sure. So one of our listeners wanted to know, what is the sort of considerations that go into making a hybrid for you? And they specifically reference that the Pine Sol, Go GOG, is a cut they love. they were a bit caught off guard. They weren't exactly expecting you to make a hybrid with it, and they thought, oh wow, there's maybe all these cuts I wasn't necessarily thinking he might work with. What is it? Is it just you liking the flower and going, this will work well? Like, what goes into you picking a cut to breed with?
Well, that's just it. It's the I fall in love with the mom, the cut, and I want to see what else we can do with it. So it's like a bit of experimentation at that point. But it starts with that. It starts with I like the cut. Sometimes you find a cut that you just want to see what happens, and that's happened a few times. But really, it's the like the Sunshine Biscuits is a good example of one where I absolutely love the mother. I love the flavor. Potency's missing. It's just not that strong, even for me. And I don't need like overpowering cannabis, but it's just not that strong. It's kind of a quick lasting, high effect. And the flavor is just phenomenal, And so that one's an outlier because of that. It's like, maybe we can improve this. And we did. And I feel like the strength of what we've made is, more in tune with what we think it should be. Not the cut, but just cannabis in general. But it maintains that flavor, the beautiful colors, the experience you have with Cherry 8K, right? So that's an outlier of that. But other than that, it's like, oh, I love this cut. Let's just work with it and see what happens, And like I said, most of the time, we're not happy with the results. And maybe most people would be, but I'm not, Like, if there's too many damn phenos, it's not what we're trying to do, If it's too dominated by chemdog, that's also not what we're trying to do. And in that case, we may try the BX2 male, right? And if that's not where it is, then it just goes in the drawer, and we'll deal with it some other day. There's plenty of types of work we can do with those, but what we're trying to do at Lucky Dog now, that's not really in tune with what we're doing. So it goes in the drawer. We're not trying to sell a guy in Texas, for instance, or Arkansas, or Mississippi. Well, let's take Mississippi because they're actually medical now. But, Georgia, and then like confuse them with a bunch of phenos. And it could be disappointing, and we don't want that. So that's what we're trying to do now, In the future, well, we got a lot of stuff to work with, and maybe our goals will be slightly different, But that's kind of it.
Nice. I like that. It's well thought out. So our final Patreon submitted questions before we do a few quickfire ones is, can you tell us a little bit about the Royal Apple? It's made by our buddy J Trees and used in the Zephyr. I guess people don't really see it anywhere else. How would you describe that mother for people?
That mother, the reason I got interested in using that mother was, so I met him at the 2017 Emerald Cup. And he gave me some seeds, and they were interesting. The Long Valley Royal, we're all familiar with that. Mandelbrot's work. And then crossed with the Sour Apple, I believe it is. And so, that's interesting. That sounds interesting to me. So I popped it. Honestly, they weren't like what I hoped, but there was one pheno that had this amazing color and purple. And I don't really have a lot of beautiful. I wanted to like have a visually different and stimulating kind of cross, to kind of like give people who are into that an option at Lucky Dog. And so that was where I started. It didn't have the structure, didn't have, say, the potency. So it was a prime candidate to be crossed with the BX3. And so that's what I did. I worked it into a pollination that I did, and I was really pleased with the results. I loved the color, the structure. Everything was improved. But it had that pedigree and also that extra fuel chem, just, sticky, icky, just destroy you kind of thing. And so we went with it, that's pretty much the story. It started off with, I wanted more beautiful. I wanted a visually appealing flower, just to see what comes from it. Because oftentimes with deep purple strains like that, gosh, they're pretty, but the flavor, potency, oftentimes those things are missing. With the Zephyr, we nailed it. We got it. We had those pink, purple hues, but we had this fucking dripping trichome production and just like amazing flavor. I fell in love with it, and very consistent, like 2 phenos, it was really nice.
Beautiful, great answer. And I love to hear that J Tree's work made it into the library. So on to our final questions. We'll juggle it up a little bit this time so we don't repeat any from last time. First one is, what's the single most memorable cannabis experience you've had? So it doesn't necessarily have to be like the most potent hit you ever took, but just for whatever reason, it just sticks with you as like that was just a great memory and cannabis was involved.
Well, I did share with you that joint that I smoked in 1991, and that's definitely at the top of the list. But I'll give you another one. In Grateful Dead land, you would find what they call backstage bud. And backstage bud, it wasn't a particular strain. It was what they wanted. As they, came out in the parking lot and searched around. They got a lot of clout, so they're going to see things that I'm not going to see. Even though I'm out there every day, they come out, for a minute. I know who Steve Parrish is. You want to see some good weed? Hey, Steve Parrish, he's the roadie for, a roadie for the Grateful Dead. He was Jerry Garcia's right hand man. He's like a bouncer / guitar polisher / roadie. Like, he did it all. So I don't know if he was the one, but I know he loves weed, and he would come out. You'd see him out there every now and again. I mean, mostly he was working. But you had a thing called backstage bud. And this is the backstage bud. It wasn't the same as yesterday. It wasn't the same as the last set of shows in the other city. This is what they're smoking tonight. And there was this one particular backstage bud that was, I think we were in Oakland, California, and I believe it was December, and I believe it was in December of 1992. And this weed was indoor weed from Minnesota. I believe Minneapolis or St. Paul area. This stuff looked like someone had taken sugar water and sprayed it on it and let it dry. It looked like rock candy, and it was almost fake looking. The buds were kind of sparse. They were definitely like coated in this like glassy like trichrome. It was just oozing with resin, And the jars were all eighths mason jars that were sealed somehow. Don't know how they would have done that. Like when you open it, you hear the pop. Like a canned jar. And that stuff stands out in my memory. Don't know what it was. Don't know what the strain was. It was just backstage bud. And then someone I knew, my little buddy, little Mike, he's rest in peace. He's not with us anymore, but he had a knack for networking that I've never seen anywhere in my life to this day. And he somehow came across, a box of these eighths and mason jars. And he, this is the backstage bud. We didn't question that. It was phenomenal. And it was amazing, It was so good. So that always will stick out in my head. And that's a long time ago. That's 1992. It's a long. So I would say, that memory's endured,
Brilliant. What a great story. So next one, if I'm going to drop you off on a desert island and you can only take 3 strains with you to grow for the rest of eternity, what 3 are you taking?
Chemdog, I think. Yeah, Chemdog. I don't know, man. Sour Diesel. And something different. You make me pick 3. Tits.
A selection. I like that. That. What sort of changes do you think are needed to help keep the OGs in the system and not being forced out?
The OGs are not business people. Business people and OGs, as you say, they're very different animals. So I would say, like, to the death, protect the home grow. To the death, Like, increase the numbers allowed. Like, how many tomato plants am I allowed to have? Endless. So why would cannabis be different, And right now in the United States, the biggest problem I see right now is the federal government is gearing up for national legalization. How are they doing that? Right now what they're doing is they're preemptively creating a regulatory system that's going to affect us all as national legalization comes. Oh, who did the federal government ask? They asked liquor producers. They asked beer producers. We all know that that industry feels falsely that they're at odds with cannabis. That cannabis is direct competition. You and I both know, and we discussed it last night over dinner, that that's not the case. That cannabis and, say, wine, beer, they go to hand in hand. They're actually complement each other. If I'm a beer, if I'm way into beer, which I don't drink beer anymore, but if it was, the same kind of experience I'm having with craft beers is the same kind of experience I'm going to have with cannabis. The people who are making the rules, they get it wrong every time, and now they're getting ready to get it really wrong. The federal government has put together a regulatory committee or whatever you would call it, and it's based on like the makers of Molson, Kentucky cheap bourbon, and others, and it's mostly alcohol. And it's, to me, I think it's important that we don't just stand by and say, yeah, cannabis is like alcohol. It's not like alcohol, you know, and it's not. It intoxicates you, but that's it. That's as far as it goes on a public safety standpoint. So as far as like the way we view wine and craft beers and flavor, that is very much relating to cannabis and how we perceive it and experience it, you know. But how could the federal government understand that? How could any of these people who feel like they're in direct competition, you know, people have $50 this week to spend on their vice, you know? The liquor and alcohol industry says we want all $50, right? So if you put them in charge of developing a regulatory system for cannabis, they're going to make sure that they get the $50 over here still. What does that mean? That means they're going to like push us out, you know, the OGs, as you say. It's already happened in many states like California, you know? And so, like, that would be the focus. That would be the place that we have to stop. And we can't do it after. We have to do it before. Because, as we all know, you can't change what they already do. You can't go back. It's so difficult. It could take decades. Now's the time. Now's the time to get involved. Now's the time to come out of the shadows. Now's the time to push back. Now's the time for us to say what regulation for cannabis should and shouldn't be. We don't want no regulation. We all want a safe product. But I don't want Molson to tell us what that safety is. They don't know anything about safety. They've been, their gig has been, you know, like safety got circumvented around their industry. Their industry is not safe. I'd like to have a nice little drink, you know. You like wine, I like wine, you know, and others. I like bourbon, you know. I appreciate good bourbon, good Kentucky bourbon. And so, like, you know, it just doesn't translate. The liquor industry, the alcohol industry, let's say, their regulation doesn't translate to cannabis. Now, if you talk to a politician, to them it clearly does. It's two vices that people spend money on. We're going to tax the fuck out of it, and we're going to make money on it. To them it makes sense, and I understand that. And this isn't like adversarial. It's just they're uneducated. They don't understand cannabis. We do. So now's the time. If you're a big cannabis producer out there, you know, get off your fucking ass and stop counting your fucking money in your jet and get involved. You're the ones that are going to speak for me. And so since you're going to speak for me, make sure you speak clearly and accurately for me. I am an OG, and there's many of us out here. If you want to do it right, you do it right. But get involved, you know. Take your fucking millions of dollars you made off the legacies that many of us produce and fucking put it where it belongs. Put it where your mouth is and stop bullshitting and get involved. And I will get involved too, but I don't have that power. I don't have that pull. So you do it. You know what I mean? Don't let it fuck up. Yeah, it may work out for you. You'll figure out a way to work out for you. But what about the plant? What about the culture? What about the rest of us? You know, get involved because now's the time. The United States Congress has already passed a bill to allow the regulatory system to be developed. But the people, the players that they invited in, they're the wrong people. They're not the right people. They're going to take it out of your pocket. They're going to take it from you. So be careful. And furthermore, protect the home grower. Don't feel threatened by the home grower. I see a lot of these big producers are pretty adamant against the home grow. It disgusts me. It makes me sick to my stomach. You don't get it if that's your position. If you are against the home grower because you want to make your little money off the eighth, you don't get it. And you need to wake up and you need to act right. And you need to like put your money where the culture is. This is not alcohol. No one makes beer or liquor at home for consumption. It's a hobby. It's a niche. Cannabis is different, and that's the main reasons why. And I think that's, you know, maybe your point that the home grower is the backbone of cannabis. Why? Because the home grower has learned, you know, what you learn from growing cannabis is one of the most important lessons you can learn. You can be self-reliant. You can be self-sufficient. You don't need everything that you can buy. You can actually produce some of the things that you consume. Cannabis would be at the top of the list. And when you discover that you can, you know, when you fall in love with cannabis, it's at the top of the list of things you love. It's not like, yeah, I'm okay with it. You know, no, you love it. You know, if you don't love it, okay. But when you do love it, you become passionate about it. When you grow your own cannabis, it opens up a door that you never had open. Like you can be passionate about so many things that you consume that you can. produce yourself, at home for you and your family. I don't give a fuck if it's San Pedro, I don't give a shit if it's tomatoes, kale, whatever it is. You discover through cannabis, just like I did, that you can be in control and empowered by what you consume and producing yourself. So that should always be the focus. Without that, there's no real legalization,
So for the final question, we're going to jazz it up a bit here. I want you to give me a quick summary of what a day in the life of SkunkVA would be in 10 years' time if everything goes to plan. Do you wake up in Malibu with a jacuzzi out front? Like, what's a day for you in 10 years' time if everything goes well?
Sheesh, I don't know, man. That's a long time from now. I'm glad you didn't ask what my day like is today, because nobody wants to hear about that. But I would say, what I talked about, like, pulling off some of these goals, like being like, how do I say, reintroducing, injecting into the cannabis culture the old school. How did this start? Never letting the user, the grower, the big producer forget, where did all this come from? How did we get to this point? And I think that, like, the clean, keeping dedicated to the furthering of the plant itself, whether it be cleaning it from pathogens, whether it be creating new practices for people to avoid pressure from pathogens and stuff like that. I think that's good work, and I'm happy with that, I would like to be, part of that movement, and I am going to be part of that movement, but I would like it to be successful like that. And then, of course, what I said about when the United States goes national legalization, it's one of the biggest things that's going to happen on earth, Imagine cannabis producers in the United States exporting cannabis to China, Imagine a stressed out society like China, feeling some relief from their day-to-day like we do with cannabis. So to me, that would be it. Where I'll be, Malibu, I don't know about all that, I've been to Malibu. I don't, it's not for me, But, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to have to work as hard as I am in 10 years from now. I'm going to be 50 years old next year, So I feel like I work too hard a lot. And that would be, personally, that would be something that I would want to go for, to more kind of feel like, all right, we fought the battle, and like we made some progress, and let's pass it on to the next generation, and let's hang out and chill with our dogs and fucking smoke a fatty on the beach somewhere, maybe, or on the top of a mountain. But as far as cannabis and the culture goes, I just would like to I think that it's being you say OGs, has kind of gotten, it's starting to feel like a relic. It's starting to feel like the past. It needs to be re-injected. It's not the past. We're out here still. We're still influencing. We're still working, so that part I would say I would want to be part of that, to re-inject that back into the culture that, hey, young man or woman, this is where this all happened. This is where it all came from. This is what had to happen for you to enjoy this plant,
That's awesome to hear that even in 10 years' time, you're still serving the plant. I love that. So that brings us just about to the end of it for this one. Do you have any comments or shout-outs you want to throw in the mix?
Nope.
Perfect. Well, as always, a huge thank you for coming on the show.
Except for you. I appreciate you. I really do. You are one of us. You perpetuate the culture. You perpetuate the facts, the realness of it. It's so easy for the big players to gloss over some of the things that happen. Maybe they don't even notice. Maybe it never occurred to them. And you keep it alive, and we all appreciate you for it.
Oh, you're too kind. It's reciprocal. Anyway, that brings us to the ends of it. Thanks so much again.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
So what do you think, guys? Absolutely incredible one, in my opinion. We're so incredibly grateful for SkunkVA taking the time to chat to us yet again, sharing all of his insights and experiences. As he said so many times, this is his life. As always, we're hugely appreciative of both you and our sponsors, Seeds Here Now, best seed bank in the game, all the hottest breeders. Go get some Lucky Dog seeds right now from Seeds Here Now. Likewise, go check out cope at biological systems. Get yourself some Afiparem or some Spidex Vital. Trust me, release these before you have a problem and you can avoid the tears and heartache of pest and predator infestation. Trust me guys, you've got to stay on top of this one. Likewise, a huge shout out to our friends at Pulse Sensors. You know them, you love them. A single tent, single room, a multi-state operation. They're all using pulse sensors. If you don't have one, get serious guys, get a pulse. Increase yields, resin, flavor, everything you want. Check them out. Likewise, huge shout out to the Patreon gang. We love you. They heard this one hella early. If you're just listening to this live now in the general public, just know we're multiple episodes in the future. They've listened to it. They're talking about it. You've probably seen it on Instagram. And you're like, hey, I haven't heard that one yet. That's right. Got to go join the Patreon. www.patreon.com/the podcast. That'll do it for this one, friends. This is Heavy D. Signing off from the Upside Down Library. We'll see you.